This sleazy man was secretly following the two sisters. He had lustful intentions toward the younger, mentally impaired sister. After the older sister, Yanwu, left the house, the man hiding under the eaves finally got his chance. Just as he was about to rape the young girl, the older sister returned and noticed something was wrong. She quickly grabbed an umbrella nearby and beat the man viciously, but she was no match for the man. She was quickly knocked unconscious. The innocent younger sister screamed for help. Fortunately, their mother, King Su, returned just in time. The man took the opportunity to flee in panic. King Su rushed into the room and saw her daughter lying on the ground. At that moment, the stepfather entered and noticed the bloodstains on the floor. He immediately gave chase. Unfortunately, the man had already fled far away. It turned out that the man was the landlord's son. King Su went to confront the landlord. However, the landlord blamed King Su for not taking care of her daughter properly. King Su was speechless. It turned out that King Su had married the prosecutor An Su, who came from a wealthy family, for the sake of her daughter's future. However, being a stepmother in a wealthy family was no easy task. Her mother-in-law Mingrai was dissatisfied that King Su was a widow. Even In Su's daughter Yuro was unhappy with this stepmother. Fortunately, with her husband's love, King Su was able to endure the marriage. Yanwu knew her mother was having a hard time, so she took her mentally disabled younger sister Yuro and rented a house outside. But less than 2 months after moving in, the sisters were targeted by the landlord's son, leading to bullying. King Su felt deeply guilty upon seeing this heartbreaking scene. The stepfather, upon seeing this, angrily accused Yanwu of not living in the house they had bought for them. Hadn't he already arranged everything for them? Yanwu explained that she had sold the house to pay off debts. After all, her father had left a large debt before he passed away. The stepfather only then realized that the two children were secretly paying off debts. He immediately told his wife to help the children pack their belongings and move back home. Since they were a family, they should live together. King Su was very grateful to her husband for saying this. After all, with her husband's support, she had the courage to bring the children home. The mother and two daughters were very excited on their way home, because they finally had a real home. However, when Ninsu told his mother and daughter about this in advance, they were very angry. Neither of them wanted to accept the two children living in their home. Especially his daughter Yuro was extremely opposed to this. She couldn't accept living with two strangers. Because of her daughter's attitude, Insu was very dissatisfied. As a result, the father and daughter's argument was witnessed by the mother and two daughters who had just arrived. At that moment, Yuro realized that her stepmother had already brought the children into the house, so she told her father she would move out of the house. After saying that, she stormed upstairs. Mingrai also tried to persuade her son to reconsider, even mocking her daughter-in-law for daring to take over the house. Yanwu saw this situation and realized that this family did not welcome her and her sister. So, while her mother was comforting Yuro, she left her sister alone here, and left first. As long as her sister had a place to rely on, that was enough. Thus, Yanwu dragged her luggage, preparing to return to her rental apartment. But when she actually reached the door, she thought of that despicable man again. Out of fear, she could only find a random sauna to spend the night in. At that moment, her boyfriend Yunchai suddenly called. It turned out that Yunchai had bought fried chicken and delivered it to the door of her rental apartment. Upon learning of his girlfriend's ordeal, he immediately brought her back home. Looking at Yanwu sleeping soundly, Yunchai tenderly applied ointment to her wounds. The next morning, he even cooked her a feast. Yanwu was deeply moved by Yunchai's thoughtfulness. Although she had a difficult life, she was lucky to have such a wonderful boyfriend. In Yanwu's heart, she and Yunchai were just ordinary people struggling to make a living. Little did she know that Yunchai was the son of the president of J Cosmetics Company. Fearing that Yanwu would break up with him if she found out the truth, he only told her that he was an employee at a cosmetics company. Meanwhile, Yuro had been secretly infatuated with Yunchai, and even went out of her way to work as his secretary at his company. But Yunchai always treated her like a younger sister. But the overly confident Yuro believed that Yunchai must also like her, so she began to intentionally or unintentionally try to please Yunchai's parents. She visited them with expensive gifts. Yunchai's father, Mingku, had always known that his son had a girlfriend. He mistakenly thought Yuro was his son's girlfriend. He was very satisfied with this future daughter-in-law. Getting the chairman's approval made Yuro extremely excited. After Yanwu found out that her boyfriend worked at a cosmetics company, she decided to apply for a job there using her own abilities. However, during the interview process, she happened to run into her stepfather's daughter, Yuro. Yuro didn't want to see Yanwu, so she told her not to come work there. But no matter how much she tried to stop her, she couldn't change Yanwu's mind. Seeing this, Yuro tampered with the application list, but she didn't know that she had only destroyed the application form in the president's hands. Another staff member still had Yanwu's information. Thus, Yanwu was invited to the office for an interview. However, when Yunchai saw his girlfriend come to the company, he was startled. He never expected that the job Yanwu was interviewing for was at his own family's company. company. Yanwu was also stunned to see her boyfriend as her interviewer. It wasn't until she saw the sign in front of him that read Vice President that Yanwu realized Yoon Chae's identity. This left her in a daze. Yoon Chae could sense Yanwu's feelings at that moment, so as soon as the interview ended, he immediately came to explain to Yanwu. But Yanwu clearly couldn't accept it, because she and Yoon Chae had been dating since university. She had always assumed their family backgrounds were similar, which is why their relationship had never felt strained. Yoon Chae explained he hadn't intentionally kept it a secret, but had simply missed the opportunity to be honest each time. Since he had never revealed his identity to anyone at university, he had grown accustomed to keeping it hidden when facing Yanwu. Yanwu felt that their family backgrounds were too different. The two of them were doomed to be unhappy together, so she just wanted to find an ordinary person. Thus, Yanwu broke up with Yoon Chae. From then on, Yanwu was immersed in the pain of heartbreak. Even when Yoon Chae was waiting downstairs at her house, she refused to go out to meet him, because in Yanwu's heart, Yoon Chae was doing this to guard against her, afraid that she was after his family's wealth. So this time, no matter what, she didn't want to forgive Yoon Chae. With no other option, Yoon Chae decided to propose to Yanwu directly, so he instructed his secretary to decorate his apartment, indicating that he wanted to give the girl he loved a surprise. Euro was thrilled to hear this, thinking that Yoon Chae was going to propose to her, so Euro went to the mall and carefully bought the things Yoon Chae had asked for, decorating Yoon Chae's apartment very warmly. In Euro's heart, she was the mistress of this house. However, Euro never imagined that the person who would move into this house was her sister. Yanwu eventually reconciled with Yoon Chae after his efforts. That night, she was taken to their wedding home by Yoon Chae. Meanwhile, Euro couldn't wait to go to the apartment she had decorated, but when she arrived, she was stunned. It turned out that Yoon Chae was actually dating Yanwu. Watching Yoon Chae kiss Yanwu, Euro hid in a corner, furious. In that moment, her hatred for her stepmother and Yanwu reached its peak. Yoon Chae was about to go to the car to retrieve the engagement ring he had left behind. But just as he stepped out the door, Euro burst in and knocked the fruit out of Yanwu's hands. Yanwu was shocked to see Euro. Why was she here? Euro accused Yanwu of stealing the man she loved. Yanwu only then realized that Euro had also fallen in love with Yoon Chae. Fearing to offend Euro, Yanwu could only keep explaining the situation, but Euro refused to listen to her excuses and stormed off in anger. Because of Euro's appearance, Yanwu ultimately did not accept Yoon Chae's proposal. Now she just wants to work hard to prove herself. She can get married later once she becomes more accomplished. Yanwu hopes Yoon Chae will give her some time. She believes they will eventually get married. Seeing this, Yoon Chae no longer presses the issue. As long as Yanwu was willing to stay by his side, nothing else mattered. Euro couldn't accept that the man she had a crush on liked Yanwu, so as soon as she got home, she slapped Sue and verbally abused her. In order to prevent Yanwu and Yoon Chae from living together, Euro agreed in front of her family to let Yanwu move back home. However, Grandma immediately objected upon hearing this. She told her granddaughter not to force herself in such matters, but Euro hypocritically claimed she had changed her mind. King-soo was grateful to Euro upon hearing this. She did not know that Yanwu moving into this house was the beginning of a nightmare. Since Yanwu joined Yoon Chae's company, the two not only chatted frequently during work hours, but also spent time together after work. However, this affectionate scene was witnessed by Euro, who was the secretary. When she saw the engagement ring on Yanwu's neck, Euro was so angry that she turned and fled. Driven mad by jealousy, Euro decided to take revenge on Yanwu. That night, she sneaked into Yanwu's office. She soon discovered that Yanwu had confidential company documents. At that moment, Euro finally found an opportunity to take revenge on Yanwu, so she logged into Yanwu's computer when no one was in the office, and sent an email to a rival company in Yanwu's name, offering to sell them their company's newly developed products, and asking how much they would be willing to pay for them. The next day, Euro couldn't wait to have her father bring Yanwu back home, and hypocritically welcomed Yanwu. Faced with Euro's sudden change, Yanwu couldn't adapt at first, but she still happily said that everyone could get along well from now on. Yanwu didn't know that moving in gave Euro the opportunity to frame her. It turned out that Euro had sneaked into Yanwu's room early in the morning and stolen her phone. The purpose was to send Yanwu's bank card information to the rival company. Thus, Euro successfully framed Yanwu. Sure enough, not long after, Yanwu received a call from the rival company. They immediately demanded to meet with her. When Yanwu met the other party, she looked puzzled. She didn't know why the other party was directly quoting her a price. However, the person from the rival company believed that Yanwu dared to do it but didn't dare to admit it. Last night, she had said that she would leak confidential information and sell the new product to them. Now she was pretending not to admit it, since Yanwu continued to deny that she had done such a thing. The man directly threatened her verbally, saying that she would have to pay the price. Yanwu followed him out in confusion, wanting to ask what was going on. However, their conversation was witnessed by the team leader, Yun-hee. Soon, the incident was exposed. In an instant, Yanwu became a traitor accused of betraying the company. Even if she wanted to explain, no one gave her the chance. Yanwu didn't know that all of this was orchestrated by Yuro, whose goal was to break up her relationship with Yun-chai and have her expelled from the company. But what Yuro didn't expect was that the company's surveillance cameras had recorded the entire process of her framing Yanwu. Since Yanwu had already been fired from the company, she couldn't prove her innocence, so she could only beg the team leader to investigate the surveillance footage in the office. She believed that someone must have hacked into her computer. As the team leader, Yun-hee was Yun-chai's sister, could not forgive an employee who betrayed the company. She humiliated Yanwu directly and stormed out angrily. Yun-chai had to rush to the hospital because his father was suddenly in critical condition. He has been at the hospital these days, so he temporarily handed over the company to his sister to manage. After all, the hospital had issued two critical condition notices for his father. At this critical moment, Yun-chai could not leave the hospital. Yun-hee remembered Yanwu asking her to check the surveillance footage, so she curiously went to the security room. As soon as she arrived at the door of the security room, she ran into Yuro coming out. Yuro was worried that the team leader would check the surveillance footage in the security room, so she took a copy of the edited footage and gave it to Yun-hee. Therefore, when Yun-hee checked the footage, she naturally did not see Yuro. This solidified Yanwu's reputation as a company spy. On the other hand, Yun-chai's father survived after emergency treatment. The doctor said that as long as the patient got through the next few days, he would be fine. However, those words ended up costing the chairman his life. As his wife, Mingya had been hoping that her husband would die sooner rather than later. Back then, she had married him only because he had threatened her, leading her to abandon her biological son, Qianshu. Now, 25 years later, she finally had her chance for revenge, so she deliberately claimed that the chairman's former wife had been killed by her. The chairman, who had been recovering quietly, learned of his former wife's cause of death. Unable to accept it, he was so enraged that he coughed up blood and died. By the time his son and daughter arrived, they were unable to see their father one last time. To avoid revealing any flaws, Mingya pretended to be very sad. On the other side, Yanwu, with the help of her company colleagues, successfully obtained the original DVD of the company surveillance footage. With this evidence, Yanwu could finally prove her innocence. She eagerly took the DVD to tell Yun-chai the truth. Upon learning that her daughter had been framed at the company, King-su decided to ask her husband, a prosecutor, for help, hoping to use his connections to investigate the truth. After her husband agreed, King-su immediately contacted her daughter to learn the details of the situation. However, Yanwu told her mother not to worry, as her company colleagues had already helped her obtain the DVD proving her innocence. After hearing this, King-su shared the good news with her husband. At that moment, Yuro, who had just finished work, was about to go find her father. However, she overheard their conversation at the door. She then learned that Yanwu had obtained the original surveillance footage. Panicked, she quickly called Yanwu to ask where she was. To her surprise, Yanwu told her she had obtained the company's surveillance footage and was going to meet Yun-chai. Upon hearing this, Yuro panicked completely. She couldn't let the surveillance footage fall into Yun-chai's hands. She immediately rushed over to stop him. However, at that moment, Yun-chai was arguing with his sister. Because Yun-hee was dating a thug as her older brother, Yun-chai naturally had to stop it. He couldn't let his sister associate with such a social outcast. Yun-hee mocked her brother for having poor taste in women, so he had no right to interfere in her relationship. She even called Yanwu in front of her brother and humiliated him, saying that as long as she was alive, they would never be together. Yun-hee did this to force her brother to compromise. Sure enough, this completely enraged Yun-chai, so he decided to no longer interfere in his sister's affairs. He angrily kicked Yun-hee out of the car. However, Yun-chai didn't know that his decision would lead to his sister's death. Yun-hee couldn't find a taxi to go home, so she tried to flag down a car. At that moment, Yuro was very worried that Yanwu might meet Yun-chai early. She decided to call Yanwu first to ask where he was, but as she reached for her phone, she accidentally dropped it at her feet. Just as she bent down to pick up the phone, an accident occurred. Yun-hee, who was standing by the roadside, was knocked down by the car. As she prepared to flee the scene out of fear of taking responsibility, Yun-hee, lying on the ground, grabbed Yuro's phone and begged her to save her. But Yuro was only worried about getting into trouble herself. She hurriedly drove away. Just then, Yanwu drove by the scene. She saw a woman lying on the ground. She immediately got out of the car to check. Upon closer inspection, she realized the woman was Yun-hee. Yanwu panicked instantly. She quickly took off her coat and covered Yoonhee with it. Then she urgently called an ambulance. At this point, Euro remembered that the woman she had knocked down was still alive. She returned to the scene to check on the situation. She saw Yanwoo kneeling beside the injured woman. At that moment, Euro decided to frame Yanwoo for the accident, so she pretended to have just happened to pass by. She then anxiously asked what had happened. When she heard Yanwoo call the woman team leader, Euro realized that the person she had knocked down was Yoonchae's sister. This made her even more panicked, because Yoonhee was lying on the ground, her body cold. Yanwoo asked Euro to go to her car and fetch a blanket. Euro saw the surveillance DVD in the car and quickly hid it. She then handed the blanket to Yanwoo. Soon, the ambulance finally arrived. Euro wanted to tidy up the accident scene, so she deliberately lied that she would stay behind to call the police and had Yanwoo take the injured person to the ambulance. After everyone had left, Euro was so scared that she collapsed on the ground. To clear herself of guilt, she quickly cleaned up the debris from the collision. She then deliberately drove the car into a utility pole. After resolving everything, she took the opportunity to file a false report, framing Yanwoo as the perpetrator and positioning herself as the so-called witness. After completing her task, Euro drove the car to the repair shop. She claimed the accident was caused by a tire slip, demanding the mechanic restore it to its original condition, promising to pay a hefty repair fee. Yanwoo accompanied Yoonhee all the way until she was wheeled into the operating room. Since Yoonhee had lost too much blood, Yanwoo followed the nurse to donate blood without hesitation. Euro, who had arrived, prayed that Yoonhee would never wake up. When Yoonchae arrived at the hospital, she deliberately acted anxious and urged the doctor to save Yoonhee. After putting on a show, Euro broke down and threw herself into Yoonchae's arms. Yoonchae couldn't believe that Yanwoo had hit his sister, so he asked Euro again if it was true. Euro insisted that she had seen it with her own eyes. Unable to believe it, Yoonchae asked Yanwoo what had happened. After learning the facts, he realized that it wasn't what Euro had said. Just then, the police arrived. They said someone had called to report that Yanwoo had hit someone on the road. They asked her to recount what had happened. Yoonchae believed her girlfriend's character and naturally couldn't let her be wrongfully accused, so he angrily scolded Euro. Yoonchae told the police that his girlfriend hadn't hit anyone and that the perpetrator had probably fled the scene. He begged the police to catch the real culprit. Upon hearing this, the police immediately took the two women to the scene of the accident. After listening to Yanwoo's description, the police also learned the details of the accident. However, Euro kept blaming Yanwoo for the accident. Unbeknownst to her, her nervous behavior was noticed by the police. Meanwhile, Yoonhee's boyfriend Tae was devastated by the news. He had just left the gang and was planning to live a peaceful life with his girlfriend. But then this tragic news came. Euro accidentally discovered that her ankle chain was missing, suspecting that it might have been lost at the scene of the crime. So she had to drive there in the middle of the night. But after searching for a long time, she couldn't find it. However, her actions were witnessed by Detective Chondu, who was investigating the case. At that moment, Chondu already knew who the real culprit was. Since there were no surveillance cameras within 200 meters of the crime scene, Chondu traced Euro's location based on the location where she had her car repaired. He asked the employees about the time Euro came to repair the car, and he even found a button from Yoonhee's clothes under the hood of Euro's car. The evidence in Chondu's hands confirmed that Euro was the hit-and-run driver, but he did not expose the murderer's lie because he already had another method in mind to deal with Euro. On the other side, Yanwoo was very happy to learn that Yoonhee had regained consciousness. Now she could finally use the surveillance video to prove her innocence. But strangely, the video in her bag had mysteriously disappeared. She didn't know that Euro had secretly taken it out and destroyed it. Euro didn't want Yanwoo to expose his crimes, but Yanwoo eventually suspected her because the night before last, Euro had gone to her car to take a blanket. However, when faced with Yanwoo's questioning, Euro naturally refused to admit it. Since Yanwoo had no evidence, she could only accept her misfortune. Yoonhee was in the hospital for 2 days and finally regained consciousness. Her family was desperate to find out who the perpetrator was from her. As a result, Yoonhee became emotionally agitated and fell into a coma again. When she woke up, she remembered what had happened at the time of the accident. It turned out that the person who had hit her was her brother's secretary. What was even more despicable was that she had driven away at the time. Just then, Yanwoo arrived at the hospital to visit Yoonhee. Euro stood nervously outside the door, afraid to come in. However, her presence still caused Yoonhee's emotions to fluctuate. Yoonhee pointed with all her strength at the woman at the door. Because Euro had been standing behind Yanwoo, the stepmother mistakenly believed that Yanwoo was the culprit. Euro understood Yoonhee's intention and quickly rushed over to hold her hand, aiming to prevent her from accusing herself. At that moment, Yoonhee completely lost control of her emotions. Although she couldn't speak, her consciousness was clear. The emotional turmoil caused Yoonhee to faint again. Euro watched Yoonhee's reaction and fell into a panic. Just when she thought she was doomed, innocent. Mingya still believed that Yanwu was involved in the matter. Yunchai firmly believed that Yanwu was innocent, so he accused his stepmother of making wild guesses. However, at that moment, the creditor came to the hospital to demand that Yanwu repay the debt. Yunchai rushed over and pulled the creditor aside to ask what was going on. He learned that Yanwu's deceased father had borrowed money at high interest rates before he died. Yanwu said she had already repaid the money, but the creditor refused to accept it. After hearing this, Yunchai understood the situation. He immediately called a lawyer to sue the creditor. Frightened by Yunchai's threat, the creditor fled in a panic. Yuro took advantage of Yanwu's absence to spread rumors in front of Yunchai's family, claiming that Yanwu had become a spy at the company for money, and also blamed Yanwu for Yunhee's car accident. Upon hearing this, Yunhee's boyfriend became enraged. Mingya, who was nearby, felt that she should handle the situation, so she angrily chased after Yanwu and slapped her, believing that she was despicable for betraying the company for money. Now she was also harming her own daughter, who was lying unconscious in the hospital. If the truth were exposed, her life would be ruined. Yanwu couldn't understand why everyone was accusing her of being the culprit, but Yunchai firmly believed that this incident had nothing to do with Yanwu. Moreover, she was the savior of his younger sister, so he hoped Yanwu wouldn't pay attention to what others said. He also promised to help her prove her innocence. Yuro is very worried that the truth will be exposed. In her panic, she goes to Yunhee's hospital room in the middle of the night. She begs Yunhee to forgive her and hopes that Yunhee will keep the truth a secret. Yunhee is afraid and wants to get away from Yuro, but she accidentally falls off the bed. Yuro is so scared that she doesn't know what to do. At that moment, Yanwu happened to come to the hospital to visit Yunhee. Seeing her walking toward the ward, Yuro hurriedly hid herself. When Yanwu entered the ward and saw Yunhee lying on the ground, since Yunhee was convulsing all over, Yanwu could only rush out to call the doctor. Seeing that there was no one else in the ward, Yuro took the opportunity to slip out. She didn't even dare to take the elevator and chose to escape via the stairwell instead. Yunhee lost her life because of Yuro. Tae rushed to the hospital and was heartbroken upon hearing the news. The two had planned to get married this month, but now this had happened. Tae placed the engagement ring he had prepared on Yunhee's finger. Yunchai, who had also arrived, saw this and wept uncontrollably. He knew his sister's death was closely related to him. After burying Yunhee, Tae swore he would avenge Yunhee. All the evidence pointed to Yanwu as the murderer. Tae therefore concluded that Yanwu was the murderer. He grabbed Yanwu by the neck, intent on avenging Yunhee. Fortunately, King Su arrived in time to stop Tae's actions. Before leaving, Tae stated that he would personally send Yanwu to prison. Meanwhile, Chandu, who had obtained evidence of Yuro's crimes, did not hand over the evidence to his superiors. Instead, he used the evidence to extort money from Yuro. Watching his ankle chain fall into the hands of the police, Yuro knew the secret couldn't be hidden anymore, so she agreed to pay a large sum of money to buy the evidence from him. Since Yunhee had lost an earring in the car accident, Yuro took the opportunity to slip the earring into Yanwu's car crevice, aiming to fabricate the fact that Yanwu had hit someone. Sure enough, the next day, Yanwu's car was taken to the police station for evidence collection. The earrings that Yuro had stuffed into the car were immediately discovered. With this evidence, Yanwu naturally became the hit-and-run driver. Soon, this report made the news. Everyone pinned the blame on Yanwu. Yunchai couldn't accept that his girlfriend was being falsely accused by the media, so he urgently called a press conference. His goal was to clear Yanwu's name through this method. But just as Yunchai was explaining the truth to the reporters, Chandu, the police officer who had taken money from Yuro, suddenly burst in. He stated that he was there to arrest Yanwu. This was because Chandu was adamant that Yanwu was the real culprit. No matter how much Yunchai tried to stop him, Yanwu was forcibly taken to the police station. Now all the evidence pointed to Yanwu as the suspect. What broke her heart even more was that Yuro suddenly came forward to testify in court, accusing Yanwu of hit and run, claiming he was the first witness at the scene that night. As all the evidence turned against Yanwu, Insu decided to handle this matter personally. This time, he couldn't bear to see his wife so heartbroken every day, so Insu used his connections to try to clear Yanwu's name. Yuro watched her father's actions and fell into complete panic. What made Yuro even more devastated was that her father discovered a transfer she had made. The family's bank account had mysteriously lost 2 billion won. Insu demanded to know where the money had gone and whether she had done something illegal outside the home. Upon hearing this, Yuro realized she could no longer hide the truth and reluctantly knelt before her father to reveal the facts. At that moment, Insu learned that the true culprit was his own daughter. He demanded that Yuro turn herself in, but Yuro refused to take responsibility. She could only beg her father to save her. Soon, the case reached its final verdict. Since Yanwu's stepfather was the judge in this case, When she walked out of the courtroom, King-soo was overjoyed. She believed her husband would clear her daughter's name. However, when Yuro saw her father, she fell into despair. After all, her father already knew the truth. He would definitely expose her crimes. But what Yanwoo and King-soo didn't expect was that the upright In-soo ultimately chose to protect his daughter. Because he considered Yanwoo to be his stepdaughter, he could only do his best to help Yanwoo reduce her sentence. After all the evidence was presented, Yanwoo was finally sentenced to 3 years in prison. Yanwoo couldn't accept this fact and could only cry out her innocence. But now everyone was covering for the real culprit, and there was no way she could change her fate of going to prison. Even Yoon-chae, who had always believed in her, began to doubt the truth. If his sister had really been brutally murdered by his girlfriend, their relationship could never go back to the way it was before. At this moment, Yanwoo realized that Yoon-chae no longer believed in her either. Yoon-chae had blamed her for his sister's death. Faced with all the evidence before him, Yoon-chae could only choose to believe the police. Unable to accept the truth, he got drunk that night. This gave Yuro, who had a crush on him, the opportunity to act, so she deliberately took off Yoon-chae's jacket and lay down next to him. King-soo couldn't accept her daughter's conviction, which caused her to fall ill from anger. Yanwoo couldn't accept the judge's arbitrary verdict, so she had no choice but to hire a lawyer to appeal on her behalf. However, the lawyer told Yanwoo that she had missed the appeal deadline. Most importantly, they had no concrete evidence to prove her innocence. If she appealed, it might be detrimental to her case. After all, a 3-year prison sentence was already quite lenient. Upon hearing this, Yanwoo suspected that her lawyer had been bribed. This was hard for her to accept. After all, the verdict had already been finalized. Yanwoo was eventually taken by the police to the cell, where she would be imprisoned. No matter how much she struggled, she couldn't change the fact. Little did she know that her days in prison would also be tough. On her first day in the cell, she was beaten up by her cellmate Chimee. The reason was that Chimee disliked her for not following orders. King-soo firmly believed that her daughter had been framed, so she spent every day searching for evidence to clear her daughter's name. But when she sneaked into Yuro's room, she was discovered by Yuro. This led to an argument between the two. Meanwhile, the mentally disabled Sue was determined to help her sister clear her name, so she took the opportunity. While Yuro and her mother were arguing in the room to look through Yuro's phone, she copied down the phone number and name of the police officer she had called the most. She believed this number must be closely related to her sister's case. She then handed the copied number to her mother. King-soo was puzzled by the name of Officer Park. She couldn't understand why a police officer investigating the case would frequently contact Yuro to let her daughter know about this situation. King-soo wrote down the information she had gathered the next day on a note. Since she couldn't meet Yanwoo, she had the prison guard deliver it to her daughter. When Yanwoo saw the note her mother had brought, she immediately had an answer in her heart. It turned out that Chondu, who was investigating the case, was colluding with Yuro. No wonder she had suddenly become the murderer. They had all conspired to frame her as the killer. Even her stepfather was involved. At that moment, Yanwoo realized she couldn't trust anyone anymore. On the other side, Yoon-chae was facing a cash shortage at his company. His stepmother wanted to use this opportunity to have her son take over the company instead of Yoon-chae. But Yoon-chae didn't want his father's company to fall into others' hands, so he had to go around seeking investors. Yuro's grandmother was also a partner in their company. When she learned of Yoon-chae's company's difficulties, she voluntarily offered to invest funds. But unexpectedly, she made a demand that Yoon-chae marry her granddaughter Yuro. As long as the two families became one, she would fully support Yoon-chae and the company. To save the company, Yoon-chae had no choice but to agree to the condition. So the next day, he visited Yanwoo in prison. His purpose was to propose a breakup. After all, his sister had died at her hands, and their relationship had long since ceased to exist. Facing the man she loved most choosing to leave at this critical moment, Yanwoo painfully kept explaining to Yoon-chae. But Yoon-chae was impatient with her, and even left in a hurry without even looking at her. After Yoon-chae agreed to marry Yuro to save the company, Yuro proudly told Yanwoo in prison the next day, showing off the ring he had given her. She arrogantly explained that this time, Yoon-chae had proposed to her. She even reminded Yanwoo to have her mother and sister move out of her house. After achieving her goal, Yuro was about to leave. Yanwoo took the opportunity to remind Yuro that her lies would eventually be exposed, and that once he was released from prison, he would definitely seek revenge on her. At that time, the one going to prison would definitely be her. Yuro panicked upon hearing this, because Yanwoo had made a close friend named Yeon-soon in prison, and coincidentally, Yeon-soon was set to be released from prison the next day. In recent days, she had also learned the truth about Yanwoo being wrongfully imprisoned. imprisonment. So when Yanwu showed her a photo of her family and asked her to meet with them on her behalf, Yunsun agreed without hesitation and repeatedly assured her that she would help investigate the truth behind the case. On the other side, Chandu, who held leverage over Euro, he frequently extorted money from Euro. When he learned that Euro was going to marry the victim's family, he took the opportunity to demand another 5 billion won from Euro, threatening to expose everything if she didn't comply. Faced with Chando's extortion, Euro could only seek help from her father. But what Euro didn't expect was that her conversation with her father was overheard by King Su outside the door. King Su finally understood the truth. Angry, she burst into the room and confronted Euro about why she did this. So you've been colluding with the police all along. Facing her stepmother's accusations, Euro naturally couldn't admit it. She even tried to defend herself, claiming she had misunderstood. With no other choice, King Su dragged Euro to the police station to turn herself in. Euro kept making excuses. As the two struggled, Euro suddenly pushed King Su down the stairs. When Ninsu arrived home, he found his wife lying on the floor, unable to move. He knew it must have been his daughter who did it. He immediately called an ambulance to take King Su to the hospital. Yunsun arrived with a photo based on the address Yanwu had given her. She happened to see King Su being loaded into the ambulance. Euro was afraid that Sui's crying would be seen by outsiders, so she took the opportunity to cover Sui's mouth and drag her back home. Yunsun saw this and rushed over in a panic. She wanted to confirm whether the girl in front of her was Yanwu's sister, but because Euro had already closed the door, she couldn't get in. With no other option, Yunsun went to the prison to tell Yanwu about this. At that moment, Yanwu finally learned that his mother had also been framed by Euro. What was even more devastating was that the next day, she received a wedding invitation from Euro sent to the prison. Looking at the mocking wedding photo on the invitation, Yanwu's hatred was completely ignited, so she decided to find a way to escape and teach Euro a lesson. That day, Yanwu told Yunsun the route she planned to escape, hoping that she would wait at the address on the note with her car. Yunsun immediately understood her meaning. Soon, the day of Euro's wedding arrived. Yanwu wanted to carry out her plan, so that day she deliberately provoked Chimey, who had been bullying her. The others then gave Yanwu a lesson. The injured Yanwu was quickly rushed to the hospital. The moment the prison guard unlocked Yanwu's handcuffs, she immediately found an opportunity to escape. The prison guard saw Yanwu's actions and rushed after her, but Yanwu had already planned everything. She quickly rushed to the location Yunsun had mentioned, and Yunsun happened to appear at that moment and picked up Yanwu. They quickly arrived at a secluded location and switched vehicles. By the time the police arrived, they had already escaped. Thus, Yanwu appeared at Euro's wedding with a new identity. When she saw the couple's wedding photo, she immediately tore it apart. Soon after, Euro received a threatening text message demanding she come to the rooftop. Otherwise, all her secrets would be exposed. Euro thought it was Chandu coming to ask her for money again. She had no choice but to go to the roof as requested, but she was surprised to find that it was Yanwu. Remembering how Euro had framed her, Yanwu decided to take her down with her. But just then, Yun Chai stopped her in time. He couldn't understand why Yanwu had become like this. If you've committed a crime, you should stay in prison and reform yourself. Why escape and drag others into it? Shouldn't you be asking for forgiveness and a reduced sentence? At that moment, Yanwu saw Yun Chai's true colors. It turned out that their relationship was so fragile. Yun Chai would rather believe others than believe himself. Just then, the police arrived. Seeing this, Yanwu pulled Euro and made her tell the truth in front of everyone. As a result, both of them accidentally fell from the building while struggling. The police had placed an air cushion below. Yanwu and Euro only suffered minor injuries after falling from the building. This farce also caused Euro and Yun Chai's wedding to end abruptly. When Yanwu woke up in the hospital, she told the warden about her grievances and revealed the facts about the police fabricating evidence and the judge protecting the real culprit. She had been framed and wrongfully accused of murder. The warden was so shocked by Yanwu's words that he couldn't believe it, so he immediately agreed to help Yanwu reinvestigate the case. At that moment, Yanwu finally saw a glimmer of hope, but just as she was beginning to feel hopeful, the warden suddenly received a phone call. It turned out that Yanwu's stepfather had suddenly found the warden. He then revealed his identity as a high court judge and stated that he had personally presided over Yanwu's case. He explained that recently, some inmates had been refusing to admit their crimes and urged the warden to take measures for management and supervision. After listening, the warden understood his meaning and naturally ignored Yanwu's request. Instead, he announced in the news that the prisoner had escaped to stop the wedding because she couldn't accept her boyfriend's betrayal. Yanwu was furious when she saw the false report on the news. She realized that she should never have trusted anyone. After this escape, Yanwu's sentence was increased. From 3 years to 4 years. Chime saw Yanwu's situation and immediately mocked her. Yanwu was instantly enraged by her arch-rival's sarcasm and immediately started fighting with her. Soon, Yanwu was clutching her stomach in pain and screaming. After an examination by the prison doctor, it was discovered that Yanwu was already 3 months pregnant. The fetus was strong enough not to be miscarried, but the baby's heartbeat was very weak and needed more rest. Otherwise, there was a risk of miscarriage at any time. Yanwu touched her stomach and realized why she had been vomiting so much lately. It turned out she was pregnant with Yunche's child. Yanwu's pregnancy caused Chime to change her attitude toward her. For the first time, she began to worry about Yanwu's health and urge her to eat properly. It turned out that Chime had killed her ex-husband's wife to protect her daughter. Her ex-husband had not only had an affair, but also taken her child away. However, her daughter was constantly bullied by her ex-husband's current wife. In a fit of anger, she had committed a criminal act. Yanwu felt that her current status made her unworthy of being a mother, as the child would have to stay in prison with her from birth. Chime believed that since she was pregnant, she should give birth to the child, and urged her to take care of her health to ensure a healthy delivery. However, just as Yanwu was despairing about her future, she suddenly received a mysterious letter, stating that she believed Yanwu was wrongfully accused, and if she wanted to prove her innocence, she should behave well in prison, and once she was released, she would definitely provide assistance. With the encouragement from this letter, Yanwu saw a glimmer of hope. From then on, she no longer felt discouraged about life. She even began to look forward to the baby's birth. Her friends in prison also took good care of her. Yanwu told Chime that she would name the child Taeyeon after birth. Everyone agreed. After Yanwu received the mysterious letter, she often received gifts from the sender, but Yanwu never imagined that this man was her former colleague Kanwoo. Kanwoo was the son of Yunche's stepmother from a previous marriage. He had to treat Yunche as his rival in order to take over his stepfather's company, so when he learned that Yanwu had been accused of being a corporate spy by the company, he did not immediately clear her name. Since Yanwu was Yunche's girlfriend, he naturally couldn't help her clear her name. Now that Yanwu had become a criminal, he provided her with some assistance behind the scenes, as a way to atone for his earlier concealment of the truth. Soon, the day of Yanwu's delivery arrived. The prison guards quickly contacted an obstetrician. Yanwu had lost too much amniotic fluid to be transported to the hospital in time, so the doctor had to deliver the baby in prison. Just as Yanwu was about to give birth with all her strength, she fainted from exhaustion. This left everyone in a panic. After all, the fetus could suffocate at any moment inside her womb. At that moment, Yanwu, who was unconscious, seemed to see her family and loved ones encouraging her, cheering her on to give birth to the child. Thus, Yanwu regained consciousness from her unconscious state. With everyone's encouragement, she soon gave birth to a boy. Hearing the baby's cries, Yanwu felt deeply relieved. At the same time, Yunche also had a premonition that night. He dreamed that Yanwu had encountered an accident in prison. Feeling anxious, he began to worrying about Yanwu's condition. So the next morning, he rushed to the prison to see Yanwu. Since Yanwu had just given birth the night before and was still very weak, the prison guard could only remind him to come back another day. They explained that Yanwu was currently unable to meet him. However, Yunche insisted on seeing Yanwu. The guards, knowing that Yunche was a faithless man, ignored him. Since being pushed down the stairs by Uro, King-Soo had been staying at a rehabilitation center for treatment. Half a year ago, she had seen the news report about her daughter's escape from prison. King-Soo knew how much her child was suffering in prison. To help her daughter clear her name as soon as possible, King-Soo wrote down all the truths she had investigated on paper. She wanted to secretly give the note to the nurse, so she could have the opportunity to hand it over to the TV station for reporting. But what King-Soo didn't expect was that her plan failed. The nurse looked at the note she gave her but didn't take it to the TV station. Instead, she gave it to her husband. In-soo was panicked when he saw the letter his wife had written accusing their daughter. To prevent King-Soo from interacting with strangers, he decided to bring his wife home for treatment. The mother and daughter naturally objected to her staying in the house, but they couldn't overrule In-soo's decision. To help his daughter understand why he was doing this, In-soo showed her the note King-Soo had given to the nurse. Uro was astonished after reading the note, and finally understood that her father was protecting her. Sue was overjoyed to be reunited with her mother, and quickly told her a secret when no one was around. The surveillance DVD her sister had been looking for was in grandmother Mingrai's room. King-Soo wanted to get the disc from her mother-in-law as soon as possible, so the next day, she sneaked into her mother-in-law's room while she was out. After searching for a while, she finally found the evidence that proved her daughter's innocence. They then put the disc into the computer to view it. Looking at the footage on the monitor, King-Soo realized that Uro was also involved in this incident. At that moment, she vowed to make sure the real culprit was punished, so she took the CD and prepared to go find Yunche to reveal the truth. However, just as the mother and daughter were about to leave, Mingrai returned home. When she saw the messy bedroom, she realized that someone had broken into the house, but after checking, she found that only the CD was missing. She immediately guessed who had done it, because she knew the CD contained evidence incriminating Yuro, so she quickly called Yuro and told her about it. She guessed that Kingsu had taken the CD to her husband. Since she guessed that Kingsu might be at Yunchai's company, she immediately rushed over there. Sue couldn't see Yunchai, so she could only contact her by phone. But when Yunchai saw that it was an unfamiliar number, she chose to hang up, so Sue could only tell her sister the news first. Therefore, she specially sent a letter to Yanwu to tell her the good news that her mother was safe. Kingsu, feeling unwell, could only wait at the door for news from Sue, but then Yuro rushed over in a hurry and pretended to be concerned, offering to send her home. Kingsu saw this and wanted to escape, but couldn't resist Yuro and was forcibly pushed into the car. When Sue arrived at the door, she realized her mother was gone. She only saw a cane left on the ground. At this point, Kingsu had already been forcibly taken to the edge of a cliff by Yuro. He wanted to take the CD back from her, but just as the two were struggling over it, Kingsu lost his footing and fell off the cliff. At the critical moment, Yuro grabbed her hand in time. But even so, Yuro's mind was only on retrieving the CD. As she reached out to grab the backpack, she accidentally caused her stepmother to fall off the cliff. Panicked, she broke down in tears, but she quickly regained her composure. Since things had come to this point, there was no turning back, so Yuro rushed back home. She forged a suicide note in her stepmother's handwriting. She wanted everyone to believe that her stepmother had chosen to end her life. Sure enough, when her father returned home, he saw the suicide note his wife had left. He was so frightened that he immediately pulled his mother about it. Ren Shuo decided to report the incident to the police first. Yuro grew anxious when she saw her father was going to call the police. After the police searched, Kingsu was quickly rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, she did not die on the spot, but unfortunately, she had become a vegetable and could fall into a coma at any moment. Yuro finally breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this news. Not long after, Yanwu learned in prison that her mother had suffered an accident. Unable to accept the fact, she could only beg the prison guards to help her. The guard, feeling sorry for Yanwu's situation, decided to try to help her. She approached the warden on Yanwu's behalf and offered her position as collateral. If anything went wrong, she would take full responsibility. Thus, Yanwu was granted a 1-hour leave from prison. When she arrived at the hospital, she finally saw her mother lying in the hospital bed. Yanwu wept uncontrollably, unable to believe what had happened. She asked the doctor what had caused it. The doctor explained that the injured woman had been found on the mount. It was a miracle that she had been saved. At that moment, her stepfather also arrived at the hospital. Yanwu angrily confronted her stepfather about why this had happened. Insu, who was unaware of the truth, told Yanwu that her mother had committed suicide, but Yanwu refused to believe her stepfather's words. After all, her mother had said just a few days ago that she would come to visit her in prison. How could she have chosen to commit suicide out of the blue, since her mother was unconscious and unable to speak? Yanwu tried to find her sister to learn the truth from her. At that moment, Sue was being blocked by Yuro in the bathroom. This was because Sue had her mother's backpack, which had fallen off the cliff. When Yuro discovered this, he tried to take the CD from her. Thus, the two engaged in a fierce struggle in the bathroom. In the chaos, Sue snatched the CD and fled. Unfortunately, she was eventually discovered by Yuro, who took the CD from her. Yanwu searched the hospital for her sister to find out the truth. In the end, she searched the entire hospital, but couldn't find her, because the prison warden only approved 1 hour of leave. Yanwu had no choice but to follow the prison guard out of the hospital. Just as she was about to get in the car and leave, Sue suddenly spotted her sister and hurried over. She hurriedly told her sister about the CD and said that Yuro was definitely involved in their mother's accident. Yanwu had to return to prison due to time constraints. Kongwu saw the two of them parting ways. At that moment, he felt even more sympathy for Yanwu's plight. He had been corresponding with Yanwu these past few days to comfort her. Feeling guilty, he went to the hospital to visit Yanwu's mother. Yunsun had been entrusted by Yanwu to take care of Kingsu. When she realized that the man in front of her was the mysterious person who had been writing letters to Yanwu, she couldn't wait to write a letter to Yanwu, telling her that she had seen the mysterious man who had been writing to her at the hospital. Yanwu found this hard to believe. Due to her busy work schedule and daily anxiety, Yuro developed a uterine condition. After examination by a doctor, it was discovered that she was infertile. Upon learning this, Yuro could only cry every day. What if she couldn't bear children for her husband in this this lifetime. From then on, she bought various pregnancy tests every month to check. Unfortunately, no miracle occurred. Another year passed in the blink of an eye. Yanwoo took good care of the baby in prison. However, their happy times were short-lived. One day, when Euro led her employees to the prison to do volunteer work, she accidentally discovered that Yanwoo had given birth to a child in prison. She couldn't believe it. Euro knew the child must be Yunchae's. She feared that if her husband found out, he would return to Yanwoo for the child's sake, so she vowed to conceive a child for Yunchae as soon as possible. That night, Euro dressed up specially and approached her husband. After he fell asleep, she placed her hand on his chest. But Yunchae showed no interest in her at all. After all, he had married Euro to save the company. Euro was furious at her husband's behavior. Having a child after marriage was a normal thing. She couldn't understand why Yunchae was so resistant. Facing his wife's desperate pleas, he refused to compromise. To escape his wife's clinginess, he simply slept in the living room. Euro was furious when she saw this. She knew her husband still had feelings for Yanwoo. With no other options, she decided to use her grandmother to pressure Yunchae. Since she couldn't conceive naturally, she wanted to try in vitro fertilization. She hoped her grandmother could persuade Yunchae to come to the hospital, but even so, Yunchae refused to agree. At that moment, the grandmother realized that their relationship was not going smoothly. Euro waited confidently at the hospital for her husband to arrive. She believed that as long as the grandmother intervened, Yunchae would surely obey. Unfortunately, her hopes were dashed. When the grandmother told her about Yunchae's attitude, Euro immediately thought of the child Yanwoo had born for Yunchae. From then on, Euro began secretly keeping tabs on Yanwoo and her child in prison. When she found out that Taeyong could only stay in prison for 18 months before being sent out, she immediately came up with a wicked plan. She didn't want her husband to know about the child's existence. Meanwhile, Yanwoo watched helplessly as her son was about to be sent to an orphanage for adoption, which left her feeling extremely depressed these past few days. She couldn't bear the thought of her child falling into someone else's hands. After all, she still had 2 years left to serve, which meant she wouldn't see her child for 2 years. Unfortunately, the day of sending the child to the orphanage finally arrived. The prison guards had no choice but to forcibly take Taeyeon away. Though Yanwoo was heartbroken to see her child leave her, she had no choice but to accept this outcome. Euro had been keeping an eye on them. When she learned that the child had been sent to the orphanage, she quietly followed them until she saw the prison guards hand the child over to the orphanage director. She immediately rushed over and pretended to be the person adopting the child. Then she took the opportunity to swap Yanwoo's child's photo and information with another child's. After everything was prepared, Euro found a couple to adopt Yanwoo's child. The unaware director handed Taeyong over to the unfamiliar couple. The couple Euro had temporarily found had lost their own child, so they assured Euro they would take good care of Taeyong. As a token of gratitude, Euro promised to send them monthly living expenses and repeatedly urged them to treat the orphan well. After all, Taeyong was her husband's child. The couple disappeared from the city forever with the child in their arms. In the days that followed, Yanwoo lived in the agony of missing her son. She longed to be released from prison and reunite with her child as soon as possible. However, although the days of longing were long, the day of her release finally arrived. The prison guard excitedly shared the good news with Yanwoo, telling her to pack her things and prepare for release. Even the mysterious person who had been writing letters to Yanwoo sent her a gift, the clothes she would wear upon her release. The first thing Yanwoo did after her release was to bring her son back home, then seek revenge on those who had harmed her. She rushed to the orphanage, and after 2 years of separation, mother and son were finally reunited. But when the child appeared, Yanwoo noticed something unusual. She could tell that the child in front of her did not look like her son when he was young. To confirm whether she was overthinking it, Yanwoo quickly checked the boy's back and the top of his foot. Sure enough, this child was not her son. Taeyong was born with a black mole on his back and a distinct burn scar on the top of his foot. When the child was brought in, he was wearing a necklace made of rings around his neck. Yanwoo was certain that this boy was not her son. Upon hearing this, the director had Yanwoo verify the documents brought with the child. Sure enough, upon comparison, the issue was evident. The photo register in the computer was not Yanwoo's child. Their faces were completely different. Yanwoo hurried to the room to search. She believed that she could recognize the child based on her instincts. Unfortunately, she found nothing. At that moment, Yanwoo broke down. She collapsed on the ground and begged the police and staff to help her find her child. The police hurriedly reassured her that the adoption records from back then were still intact. They would do their utmost to help. Hearing this, Yanwoo's emotions finally calmed down a bit. Just then, the boy who had been swapped by Euro walked over. He sadly asked Yanwoo if she could adopt him. Seeing such a cute child, Yanwoo was at a loss. After After leaving the orphanage, she asked Young-soon to help her find out the child's whereabouts, because she had some urgent matters to attend to. Later, Yan-woo appeared at Yoon-hee's grave with flowers, but she happened to run into Yoon-chae there. He was surprised to see that Yan-woo had been released from prison, but then he accused Yan-woo of having no right to pay respects to his sister. Yan-woo was heartbroken over Yoon-hee's death in a car accident. She vowed to bring the real culprit to justice. She asked Yoon-chae why he had chosen to marry Euro, but Yoon-chae sarcastically replied that even if he hadn't married her, he wouldn't have reconciled with her. However, Yan-woo had long since lost any lingering feelings for Yoon-chae. Now she just wanted to prove her innocence as soon as possible, so she reminded Yoon-chae not to be too shocked when he found out the truth. After paying her respects to Yoon-hee, Yan-woo decided to visit her mother. However, when her grandmother heard her voice, she was so startled that she became tense. Sue, upon discovering that her sister had returned, excitedly went to open the door for her. Ming-rai saw this and angrily scolded Sue. However, Yan-woo had already arrived at the house. Sue was thrilled when she saw her sister. The two ignored Ming-rai and rushed to their mother's room. King-soo had been lying in bed for several years. Although she couldn't speak or walk, she had regained consciousness. When she learned that her daughter had been released from prison, she was still happy for her daughter in her heart. She just couldn't express her emotions. Yan-woo looked at her mother and couldn't stop crying. She had so many grievances she wanted to tell her mother. Facing her daughter's tears, King-soo also reacted. She felt sorry for her child but was powerless to help. Ming-rai quickly told Euro about Yan-woo's release from prison. After all, she knew that Euro had once harmed Yan-woo. She reminded her granddaughter to stay by her husband's side and not leave. Euro was startled by her grandmother's words. She hadn't expected Yan-woo to be released from prison so soon. She even blamed her father for letting him out, believing he should have been locked up for life. However, Yan-woo rushed to Euro's workplace that very day. Surprisingly, Euro seemed to have been waiting there for some time. She pretended to congratulate Yan-woo on his release but secretly locked the door behind him. The two women immediately began to scold each other for their actions. In Euro's heart, Yan-woo had not only taken her father away from her, but also the man she loved. She could not forgive this hatred. Looking at Euro's unrepentant expression, Yan-woo demanded to know why she was hurting her mother. She had already hurt herself enough. Why couldn't she leave her family alone? However, Euro shouted at Yan-woo to produce evidence. If there was no evidence, she could sue her for defamation. Yan-woo looked at Euro's arrogant demeanor, so angry that she trembled all over, even feeling the urge to strike out. However, Yan-woo was still on probation after being released from prison. If she caused trouble outside at this time, she would definitely be sent back to prison, so she could only endure the anger in her heart. Euro knew this, which is why she deliberately provoked Yan-woo. When she saw Yan-woo calm down, she felt a bit disappointed. At that moment, Euro decided to take matters into her own hands and send Yan-woo back to prison. When she heard someone knocking at the door, she deliberately made a commotion in the room. Then she started screaming for the people outside to call the police. Soon, the security guards from the company rushed over. Euro then picked up the broken glass on the floor and slashed her wrist. She did this to send Yan-woo, who had just been released from prison, back to jail. Euro covered her injured hand and desperately called for help outside the door. Yan-woo finally realized he had fallen into her trap. A large group of reporters and security guards rushed in from outside the door. Even if Yan-woo wanted to explain, he couldn't defend himself. The broken glass and bloodstains on the ground were enough to prove that she was the perpetrator, because Euro was clutching her injured hand and desperately asking the security guards to call the police. The reporters at the door started taking pictures of Yan-woo like crazy. Just then, Yoon-chae, who had received the news, rushed over. Euro immediately began crying and recounting her ordeal to her husband. She then buried her face in Yoon-chae's chest, looking wronged. Seeing that Yan-woo had just been released from prison and was causing trouble at the company, Yoon-chae didn't want to deal with her and prepared to leave with his wife. Yan-woo saw this and immediately called out to the two of them. She was very grateful to Euro for calling so many reporters. Since she had no place to vent her grievances, she told everyone that she had been framed and sent to prison. She also revealed the reason why Euro had cut her wrists. If she wanted revenge, she would never choose to do it in such a public place. She hoped the reporters would make their own judgments. She wasn't that foolish just after being released from prison. She would also investigate the truth behind Yoon-hee's death. She hoped the reporters would wait for her good news. Yan-woo was originally going to be taken to the police station by security. Yoon-chae let her go out of old affection. Euro was helpless seeing her husband's attitude. She took such a big risk just to send Yan-woo to prison. Unexpectedly, her plan failed again. In her anger, she took it out on her employees. As a result, the employees were unjustly fired. Yan-woo was quickly escorted out of the company by security. At that moment, Kanwoo saw Yan-woo and was very excited. Just as he was about to greet her, Yanwu fainted. Kanwu immediately took her to the hospital. Yanwu was heartbroken after dreaming about her son. Even in her unconscious state, she kept calling out her child's name. Kanwu felt deeply moved by this. Therefore, he decided to help Yanwu clear her name. After Yanwu was released from prison, Yuro noticed that her husband's attitude toward her had changed. Not only did he come home late every night, but he also frequently went out drinking. She suspected that her husband had not forgotten Yanwu. In order to win her husband's heart, she could only ask him for a child while he was drunk, believing that only with a child could they live a happy life, and that Yanwu would disappear from their world forever. So the next day, Yuro invited Yanwu out, and offered her 5 billion won to leave the city. Suddenly, someone was giving her money. Yanwu naturally accepted gladly, but the 500 million won in her hands was nowhere near enough for her to live in another city. Moreover, her mother was a patient who needed long-term medication. She reminded Yuro that this amount of money was insufficient. If she truly wanted her to leave, she should gather more money. As long as the money was sufficient, she would leave with her family. Upon hearing this, Yuro immediately agreed to her request, so she told Yanwu to wait for good news. Yuro went back that night to ask her father for help, but Insu didn't believe Yanwu would choose to leave so easily. She was the one who announced in front of the reporters that she would reveal the truth. Yuro thought Yanwu wouldn't be in a hurry to prove her innocence. She needed money to find her son. As long as she had money, she would have plenty of opportunities to get Yanwu to leave Seoul. Because of her daughter's desperate pleas, Insu finally took out a sum of money and handed it to Yanwu personally. This time, he directly gave her 10 billion won, and hypocritically claimed it was compensation for her. Yanwu didn't want to expose him, so she accepted the money. She reminded her stepfather that if he had the ability, he should help more. She had suffered a lot in prison over the years. She then placed her bank card in front of her stepfather, asking him to deposit the 10 billion won into her account. Soon after, Yanwu received the money. Seeing that her savings book now contained over 10 billion won, Yanwu did not feel happy. After all, the suffering she and her family had endured could not be resolved with money. Her life had been ruined by them, and now they wanted to use this money to wash away their guilt. How could she let them have their way? So Yanwu stormed into Yoon Chae's office that day, placed the passbook in front of him, and stated that this was compensation from his wife and father-in-law. As for the reason, if he wanted to know, he could ask them himself. Yoon Chae originally did not want to have anything to do with Yanwu anymore, but she repeatedly emphasized that she had been wrongfully imprisoned. At that moment, Yoon Chae also began to feel uneasy. He started to doubt whether his wife had lied to him, so he went to Yuro's parents' house with his doubts. He took out the savings book Yanwu had given him and placed it in front of his father-in-law, hoping they would provide a reasonable explanation. Yuro and her father felt guilty upon seeing this. Yanwu knew Yuro would desperately try to defend herself, so she barged into her stepfather's house. She wanted to see for herself how the two would explain themselves. Yuro was startled by Yanwu's sudden appearance, but she quickly regained her composure and began to defend herself. She lied that she had given the money so that her sister could live comfortably. She then falsely accused Yanwu of taking the money and still causing trouble for her. The stepfather understood his daughter's meaning the moment he heard her words. Therefore, the father and daughter began to harshly criticize Yanwu's behavior. Yanwu had already anticipated this outcome. She sarcastically remarked that as a judge, the stepfather was covering up his daughter's crimes. When the truth is revealed, he will have no choice but to step down. Yuro, enraged by this, dragged her husband to the stepmother's room. She and her family had cared for the stepmother without complaint for all these years, only to end up in such a situation. She hoped her husband wouldn't believe Yanwu's one-sided account. Yoon Chae, seeing Kingsu being cared for so meticulously, immediately sided with his wife and accused Yanwu of having ulterior motives. At that moment, Sue told Yoon Chae that she had personally seen on surveillance footage that when her sister was falsely accused of being a business spy, Yuro had entered Yanwu's office. However, the CD was later destroyed by Yuro. Upon seeing Sue come forward to testify, Yuro immediately began to defend herself, even urging her husband not to believe the words of a mentally disabled person. The father-in-law also hurriedly found an excuse to call Yoon Chae outside, desperately coming up with excuses to prove that his daughter had not done such a thing, and even guaranteed it as a judge. However, no matter how sincere the father-in-law sounded, Yoon Chae still had doubts about the matter. Although Sue was mentally disabled, she at least wouldn't lie. So after returning home, Yoon Chae decided to move out first. He didn't want to live with such a terrifying woman. Since his wife refused to return to her parents' home, he would leave instead. Yanwu, unable to find out her son's whereabouts, in order to live a stable life, could only start looking for a job everywhere. However, since Yanwu had a criminal record and had been a business spy, no company would hire her. With no other options, Yanwu had to work as a waitress at a restaurant. After all, only such places wouldn't ask about her past. Upon learning of this, Kangwoo decided to help Yanwoo find a job, so he asked Junhee's boyfriend, Tae, to let Yanwoo and Yunsoon work at his place. Since he had always regarded Yanwoo as the enemy who killed his girlfriend, he wanted to keep her close to see her true nature. He believed Tae would change his mind eventually. Thus, Yanwoo came to work at their company through Tae's arrangement, because Tae also wanted to see if the woman who had been crying foul was really as Kangwoo had described her. After Yanwoo went to work, Kangwoo came to cheer her up right away. He even brought her some juice he had made himself. However, this scene was witnessed by Yoon-chae. Yoon-chae realized that Yanwoo had taken such a low-paying job. Angry, he dragged Yanwoo aside to ask for an explanation. Seeing that Yoon-chae didn't believe her, Yanwoo didn't bother to say much and prepared to leave. However, this scene was witnessed by Yuro. She asked the two what they were doing. Yanwoo told Yuro to keep a close eye on her husband and not let him cause trouble for her. After this incident, Yuro lived in constant fear. She was terrified that her husband might rekindle his feelings for Yanwoo. She even called Tae to scold him for helping Yanwoo get the job. Tae thought there was nothing wrong with hiring employees normally. She hoped that their hatred wouldn't involve her. Yuro was furious upon hearing this. The next day, she stormed to Yanwoo's workplace and caused a scene. Meanwhile, Yoon-chae had been investigating the previous industrial espionage case. He soon discovered the problem. Yuro's name appeared the most on the list of people who had requested this ED. At that moment, he already had his answer. Furious, he rushed home to confront his wife about why she had framed Yanwoo. "How many lies have you told over the years?" Facing her husband's accusations, Yuro continued to defend herself, even reminding her husband not to fall into Yanwoo's trap. Seeing his wife's attitude, Yoon-chae was completely disheartened. He then initiated divorce proceedings, believing that there was no point in continuing their marriage. Moreover, they had no feelings for each other over the years. Watching Yoon-chae's departing figure, Yuro was heartbroken. In her world, she had already become unable to live without her beloved husband. Thus, Yuro blamed all of this on Sue. She immediately rushed back to her parents' home. Out of nowhere, she vented all her anger on Sue. Ming-rai saw her granddaughter's behavior and quickly pulled her outside. After learning that Yoon-chae had filed for divorce, she told her granddaughter to relax. She would handle it herself. However, at that moment, Yuro was found to be pregnant. The family was overjoyed upon hearing the news. At that moment, Yuro was also very happy. She never expected that her husband had just asked her for a divorce, only for the child to suddenly come to save their marriage. However, Yoon-chae did not feel happy about the baby's arrival. He didn't even know how the child came to be. After all, in Yoon-chae's memory, they had never had a marital relationship. In-soo learned that his son-in-law insisted on divorcing his daughter. He could only beg Yoon-chae to forgive Yuro for the sake of the child. He knew how much his daughter would suffer if she lost her husband. Due to his father-in-law's pleading, Yoon-chae finally relented. Thus, Yoon-chae returned to that home and began living with his wife once more. Yuro, seeing her husband had changed his mind, felt triumphant. The next day, she went to Yoon-chae's office and asked him to take her out for a fancy meal. She even pouted, saying it was their child who was craving it. Yoon-chae took Yuro to a nearby restaurant. However, they happened to run into Yanwoo and Kangwoo there. At that moment, Yoon-chae realized his wife's true intentions. Yuro had brought him there to show off. Because of this, the couple fell into another argument. Yoon-chae never imagined his wife could be so terrifying. Yuro hurriedly explained that she had done it because she cared so much about her husband. She even pleaded with Yoon-chae to forgive her. She promised that she would never do it again. The reason Yoon-chae hadn't divorced his wife yet was because he cared about their child. He told Yuro that their marriage was already over in name only. Because of this, Yuro began to have people follow Yanwoo. She was afraid that this woman might have a close relationship with her husband. Eventually, the photographer managed to capture footage of Yanwoo and Yoon-chae entering the hotel one after the other. Upon receiving the news, Yuro rushed over immediately. When she pushed open the door, she saw her husband and his ex-girlfriend together. Yuro knew that Yanwoo was taking revenge on her. Out of anger, she slapped Yanwoo across the face. Yanwoo didn't retaliate because she saw that Yuro was pregnant. She had come here to meet a client. But Yoon-chae had followed her. Not wanting to deal with the couple, she left without saying a word. Yoon-chae saw the situation and wanted to chase after her, but his wife pulled him back. He had already realized that he had misunderstood Yanwoo all those years ago, and that everything had been framed by Yuro. Yoon-chae pushed his wife away in disgust and chased after Yanwoo. Unfortunately, Yanwoo had already gotten into the elevator. In the end, he was too late, because this time, he truly wanted to apologize to Yanwoo. Yoon-chae decided to take the stairs to catch up. Yuro chased after her husband, desperately trying to stop him, but Yoon-chae didn't even acknowledge her. Suddenly, Yuro lost her footing and fell down the stairs. The child was also lost. What broke her completely was that this miscarriage left her unable to have children for the rest of her life. Yuro was completely devastated. Because of this, Yuro blamed everything on Yanwoo. She vows to take revenge on Yanwoo and make him lose his child as well. Thus, Euro contacts Taeyeon's adoptive parents and brings the child out. Over the years, she and Taeyeon have developed a deep bond. After all, the beau before her is her husband's child. However, the thought of Yanwoo makes Euro deeply resent Taeyeon. Euro called the child's adoptive mother to discuss their plans to move abroad. Since the expenses for moving abroad wouldn't be borne by the couple, the woman naturally agreed to take the child and start a new life in another country. However, Euro's actions alerted the missing persons agency to the news that Taeyeon had forged an ID to prepare for immigration overseas. They just didn't know which country the child would be taken to. Now, all they needed to do was find out the date of their departure. Yanwoo was overjoyed upon hearing this. She never thought she would finally get to meet her son. But on that day, she received some bad news. Yanwoo had just been assigned a business trip when she received a call from a private investigation agency claiming they had found her child. However, the child was set to depart for the UK in just 1 hour. They demanded she rush to the airport to stop them. The urgency of the situation left Yanwoo panicking. After all, she was currently on a business trip and couldn't possibly make it in time. She called Yoon Chai to ask him to intervene. However, the phone kept showing no answer. Yanwoo could only send a text message to Konwoo for help. At that moment, Konwoo was in the middle of a power struggle with Yoon Chai over a company position. Originally, he didn't want to get involved, but after some internal struggle, he apologized to everyone present and rushed to the airport. Yoon Chai was puzzled by his actions. However, he didn't know that his son had already been sent abroad. After settling everything, Euro said goodbye to Taeyeon. Before parting, Taeyeon gave Euro a painting. It turned out that Taeyeon had drawn Euro's likeness on paper and given it to her. The adoptive parents repeatedly assured her that they would take good care of the child, and that Euro didn't need to worry too much. After saying goodbye, the three of them hurriedly boarded the plane. When Konwoo arrived at the airport, it was already too late. Surprisingly, he accidentally spotted Euro's figure at the airport, but he didn't think much of it, because Taeyeon's adoptive parents had purchased the plane tickets under a fake identity. Konwoo was unable to find any information about them. Soon after, Yanwoo also arrived at the airport searching for her son. However, the security guard informed her that there was no one matching her description. Yanwoo desperately wanted to fly to England herself, but the security guard explained that she was still on probation and couldn't leave the country. Heartbroken, Yanwoo burst into tears at the airport. She never imagined that the son she had searched for so desperately would disappear again. At that moment, Konwoo realized that Yanwoo had already become a mother. Because of this, Konwoo was heartbroken for several days. He then sought out Yunsoon to ask for clarification. Seeing his state, Yunsoon revealed the truth. Yanwoo had discovered she was pregnant after entering prison. Therefore, Yoon Chai was unaware of the child's existence. Upon hearing this, Konwoo was once again plunged into despair. He didn't know how to continue his relationship with Yanwoo. He never imagined that the woman he loved was carrying his brother's child. Since learning that her son had gone to England, Yanwoo had been scrambling to raise money. She had nothing to use as collateral. Borrowing money from the bank was also extremely difficult. With no other options, she decided to seek help from Yoon Chai. Yanwoo decided to tell Yoon Chai the truth. Little did she know that Euro burst in at that moment. She saw Yanwoo's intentions and tried to stop her. Yoon Chai felt guilty for causing his wife to lose her child. To avoid making Euro angry, he ignored Yanwoo. Euro wanted to make Yanwoo give up searching for the child. She had someone forge a death certificate for the child. Soon after, Yanwoo received a call from the Missing Children's Center, informing her that her son had tragically died in a fire brawl. Yanwoo couldn't believe it, so she rushed to the children's center to confirm if there had been a mistake. It wasn't until the staff handed her the death certificate that she could finally believe what was written on it. Unable to accept the truth, Yanwoo fainted on the spot. Seeing this, Konwoo quickly took Yanwoo to the hospital. When he looked at the child's death certificate, he finally understood everything. Meanwhile, Euro, having achieved her goal, began destroying the evidence. She ruthlessly burned the gifts Taeyeon had given her. However, her actions were witnessed by Sue. After Euro left the room, Sue set her sights on the painting. Yanwoo, unable to accept her son's death, went to the river alone to take her own life. Just then, Yanwoo suddenly received a call from her sister. It turned out that their mother had finally responded. In that moment, Yanwoo realized she still had family to take care of. Upon returning home, Yanwoo told her family about her son's death. The sisters embraced each other and wept uncontrollably. After venting her emotions, Yanwoo saw the painting her sister had picked up. She asked Sue where it came from. Sue told her she had found it in Euro's trash can. Yanwoo roughly understood the reason. She hurriedly contacted the prison guard and asked her to check the records to see if Euro had visited the prison. After giving birth to the child, when Yanwoo received the confirmation, she finally understood everything. It turned out that her son's disappearance was all Euro's doing. She went to the building where Euro lived and sent her a text message threatening to meet her. With no other choice, Yuro had to obey. Yanwu suddenly grabbed her by the neck in anger and demanded to know why she had killed Taeyeon. Yuro, seeing this, panicked and quickly called for help, but Yanwu didn't give her a chance. Just as Yuro was struggling to breathe, the police happened to pass by and separated the two. They were then taken to the police station. Since Yanwu was still on probation, she couldn't break the law. The police hoped the two could settle the matter privately. If the other party refused, Yanwu would have to go back to prison. Feeling guilty, Yuro surprisingly chose to compromise. She made up an excuse to get the police to leave and planned to settle things privately with Yanwu. She said that as long as she didn't tell Yunchai about her son, she would agree to a private settlement. Although Yanwu hated Yuro deeply, she had no choice but to accept her proposal. Yunsoon, wanting to stand up for her best friend, told Konwoo about the situation. Konwoo was shocked to hear the news. He never imagined that Yuro would do such a despicable thing. Furious, he called Yuro to his office to confront her directly. He asked her why she had appeared at the airport last week. At first, Yuro tried to make up an excuse to brush him off, until Konwoo asked her if she knew a boy named Taeyeon. He was Yunchae's biological son. Yuro couldn't believe it. She never thought Konwoo knew everything about Yanwu. Yanwu decided to work at J Company to avenge her son, so she asked Konwoo to help her get a position. Konwoo naturally supported her wholeheartedly. Yanwu then quit the job Taeyi had arranged for her. Back then, Yanwu had only wanted to clear her name and prove her innocence. Now, she wanted to avenge her son as his mother, so she used a fake name to participate in the recruitment event held by Yunchae's company. She won first place with the highest score. When Yanwu arrived at the award ceremony, everyone was shocked. Yuro immediately objected, arguing that she had violated company regulations by using a fake name. Konwoo, however, stated that as long as the proposal was created by her, it would be acceptable. Thus, Yanwu not only won the grand prize, but also received a prize of 30 million won. She naturally became a subordinate in Yuro's department. However, what was even more devastating for Yuro was that her comatose stepmother miraculously woke up. When Kingsu saw Yuro hiding outside the door, she called out Yuro's name directly. She even chased her out and dragged her to the police station. Kingsu then revealed all of Yuro's crimes in front of her family. Grandma fainted on the spot after hearing this. Yuro was completely terrified. She could only desperately deny that any of it was her doing. However, after venting her emotions, she realized it was all hallucination. Hearing her screams, her family rushed over to ask what was wrong. Feeling guilty, Yuro quickly made up an excuse and fled the scene. To confirm the likelihood of her stepmother waking up, she hurriedly contacted a doctor to inquire about Kingsu's condition. When told that the chances of her waking up were slim, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. She immediately contacted her father to hide the stepmother. She had already arranged for a remote nursing home. However, the father and daughter's conversation was overheard by Yanwu outside the door. At that moment, Yanwu realized that his stepfather and his daughter were planning to harm his mother again. To act first and move his mother to safety, Yanwu quickly contacted nearby nursing homes. Surprisingly, all of them were fully booked with no available beds. With no other options, she had to ask Konwoo for help. She also told Konwoo about her stepfather and Yuro trying to poison her mother. Upon hearing this, Konwoo immediately understood her intentions, so he quickly contacted Taeyi for help. He asked him to escort Yuro's mother to a hidden nursing home. Taeyi already knew Yanwu's character, so he no longer targeted her. Yanwu was surprised to see Taeyi coming to help her. She never expected him to step in and help at such a critical moment. Thus, Yanwu managed to evacuate her mother in an emergency. When Yuro rushed home, she realized she was too late. Her stepmother's room was already empty. At that moment, she was overcome with panic, so Yuro quickly told her father about it and asked him to help find out where her stepmother was staying. However, to the surprise of the father and daughter, Yanwu returned that night to say goodbye to them. She explained that her mother's condition had improved recently and that she had decided on her own to send her to the sanatorium. Watching Yanwu's departing figure, the father and daughter were at a loss for what to do, since they had been unable to locate the nursing home where Kingsu was staying. Yuro began secretly following Yanwu. Sure enough, she noticed something suspicious that day. It turned out that Kingsu had remembered everything and hurriedly brought her daughter over. This time, she intended to expose Yuro's crimes, so she told her daughter everything that had happened to her back then. However, Kingsu's accusations were overheard by Yuro, who was hiding at the door. Yuro knew she was about to be exposed. Fearing her crimes would be uncovered, she stayed at the entrance of the sanatorium. After seeing Yanwu and Konwoo leave, Yuro pretended to be a family member and deceived Kingsu into coming out. Unsuspecting Kingsu arrived at the entrance. Yuro suddenly appeared and dragged her into the car. Poor Kingsu was taken away away by Yuro. What broke her heart even more was that Yuro took her to the edge of a cliff. She immediately threatened her not to reveal the truth. Otherwise, she wouldn't blame her for being ruthless. King-su begged Yuro to go to the police station and turn herself in to face punishment. Yuro, however, believed that all of this was caused by her stepmother. Driven by her hatred for her stepmother, she tried to attack her. Unfortunately, she tripped over a rock and fell off the cliff. Fortunately, King-su managed to grab her hand in time, preventing a tragedy. Yuro panicked and begged her stepmother to save her. She agreed to go to the police station to clear her daughter's name. King-su heard Yuro admit her mistake. She used all her strength to pull Yuro back up, but at the critical moment, she slipped and fell herself. Yuro was terrifying and quickly took out her phone to call for help. But she suddenly remembered her stepmother's threat to tell the police about her crimes. To hide her own crimes, Yuro gave up on calling for help, and even removed the battery from her phone and threw it into the sea, to prevent the police from tracking her location. Yanwoo learned about her mother's disappearance after receiving a call from her sister. After hearing the nurse's description, she realized that King-su had suddenly left to meet her daughter at the door. Yanwoo immediately suspected Yuro was responsible, and quickly called the police to search for her mother. She pointed her suspicions toward Yuro. However, when the police tracked Yuro's phone, they found it turned off. Moreover, the call to the nursing home was made from a public phone. Yanwoo could only ask the police to investigate the surveillance cameras at the nursing home's entrance and extract fingerprints from the public phone. Since Yanwoo had already searched the entire area and found no trace of her mother, her emotions once again plunged into despair. After failing to help, Yuro ran home and began to convince herself that she hadn't seen her stepmother or gone to the nursing home. She then went to work as if nothing had happened, until she received a text message from Chondu, which made her panic. The message said that they had found King-su and told her to meet him on the roof of the company building. Yuro, feeling guilty, went to the rooftop. However, she found it empty. Just as she thought Chondu had tricked her, someone suddenly grabbed her by the neck. It turned out that the person who sent her the text message was Yanwoo. He had deliberately used Chondu's identity to lure her to the rooftop. Yanwoo choked Yuro, demanding she reveal her mother's hiding place. However, Yuro refused to speak. Just as Yanwoo lost control and was about to kill Yuro, a phone call snapped her back to her senses. It was the police, who had found her mother. Unfortunately, her condition was critical, and she had been taken to the hospital. Upon hearing this, Yanwoo viciously warned Yuro that one day she would make her and her family beg for mercy at her feet. Seeing her mother lying in the hospital bed, Yanwoo felt deeply guilty for failing to protect her mother. Kanwoo, in order to help Yanwoo establish herself in the company, introduced her to his friend Mary, whom he had met abroad, and who happened to be an investor in the company. If she could win her over, Yanwoo would naturally solidify her position in the company. Mary had already heard about Yanwoo's tragic past from Kanwoo. Out of sympathy and admiration, she naturally became friends with Yanwoo. She even entrusted Yanwoo with her makeup for an upcoming press conference. Yuro was furious at losing such a golden opportunity to get close to an investor. So the next day, she found Mary and deliberately slandered Yanwoo. She revealed that Yanwoo was a murderer and had served time in prison. However, Yuro didn't know that Mary already knew Yanwoo was the victim. She also learned from Kanwoo that she was the real murderer. Facing such a cruel woman, she naturally disliked her greatly. Therefore, she directly kicked Yuro out and told her that Yanwoo would be responsible for her makeup from now on. Seeing that Yanwoo had stolen her spotlight, Yuro was furious. At that moment, she once again harbored thoughts of revenge against both of them. She accidentally overheard Mary's secretary mention that Mary was allergic to bee venom. She decided to tamper with Yanwoo's cosmetics. Tomorrow was the day Mary was scheduled to attend the press conference. Yanwoo had already prepared all the items needed for tomorrow's makeup. Upon learning this, Yuro took advantage of Yanwoo's absence to inject the bee venom into the cosmetics she had prepared in advance. Just as she finished and was about to close the lid, she suddenly heard footsteps outside the door. In her panic, she accidentally pricked her arm with the needle, but she couldn't think about that anymore. Yanwoo, who was completely unaware, had no idea that Yuro had tampered with the cosmetics, so she applied the bee venom-laced foundation to Mary's face. When the press conference began, Mary's face showed signs of an allergic reaction. Yanwoo's hands, which had come into contact with the foundation, also developed an allergic reaction. Due to this incident, the company was forced to suspend the press conference and send Mary to the hospital. Meanwhile, Yuro, who had accidentally pricked herself with the bee venom, her hand began to lose sensation. She rushed to the hospital for treatment. To her surprise, Mary had also been brought to the same hospital, and they were in the same ward. This scared Euro so much that she sat up immediately. She didn't dare make a sound. After the doctor's diagnosis, it was determined that both Mary and Yanwu had allergic reactions caused by bee venom. Since they were treated promptly, their symptoms were alleviated with an antidote. Mary's assistant immediately confronted Yanwu about what had happened. Yanwu insisted that her product was absolutely fine. She explained that she had conducted tests before development, and everything had shown normal results. Just then, Kanwu rushed to the hospital in a panic. When he saw the allergic reaction on Yanwu's hand, he tried to pull her away for treatment. However, Yanwu insisted on staying to make sure Mary recovered. Just then, a nurse walked in and offered to move Mary to a VIP ward. Kanwu asked the nurse to check Yanwu's hands as well. The nurse noticed that Yanwu was in the same condition and found it odd. She couldn't believe so many people were experiencing the same symptoms today. The assistant was confused. The nurse explained that the patient in the next bed was also allergic to bee venom. Upon hearing this, Yanwu curiously glanced at the bed next to her. A pair of familiar shoes appeared before her eyes. At that moment, Yanwu guessed who the patient was. Angrily, she walked over and pulled back the curtain. Euro was scared and quickly blocked her allergic hand. Mary's secretary immediately stepped forward and pulled the woman's hand to check. Sure enough, her allergic symptoms were the same as everyone else's. Euro lied that she had used Yanwu's foundation and that was why she had an allergic reaction. Listening to Euro's excuses, Yanwu knew it was her again. Angrily, she slapped Euro across the face. Mary, upon hearing this, also slapped her. Kanwu, as the company president, scolded Euro. He even demanded that she apologize to Mary and Yanwu. Euro argued that she had nothing to do with it, and blamed Kanwu for always targeting her. She then left angrily. Kanwu found Euro's words laughable. Yun Chai, upon hearing about the incident, immediately asked his wife for an explanation. Euro defended herself, claiming that Kanwu and Yanwu were framing her. She even tearfully claimed that Yanwu had slapped her. She then hugged her husband for comfort. Yun Chai, unaware of the situation, believed his wife's words. Mary had originally given up on investing in J Company due to her bee venom allergy. However, she ultimately decided not to hold it against them out of respect for Kanwu and Yanwu. The two decided to teach Euro a lesson. When Mary signed the investment contract with J Cosmetics, they directly recommended Yanwu for the position of public relations director. Euro was shocked by this. He never expected his position to be taken by someone else out of the blue. That day, Yun Chai accidentally overheard Euro's phone call. On the other end was the voice of a young Bo. The Bo asked Euro why he hadn't been in touch. Yun Chai was also puzzled by this. He didn't know that this child was actually his biological son. Just as he was about to ask about the child's identity, the foster mother walked over, took the phone, and pretended to be Euro, asking for some living expenses to be sent over. At that moment, Euro happened to walk into the room. When she saw her husband answering her call, she panicked instantly, fearing that Yun Chai would discover the child's existence. She quickly snatched the phone away. Yun Chai asked his wife, Taeyeon, who she was, and demanded that the money be sent to England. Euro could only vaguely explain that Taeyeon was a child she was sponsoring, and lied that doing good deeds would help her conceive a child. Yun Chai believed his wife's lie. That day, Yanwu encountered a mother searching for her child on the street. Having lost a child herself, she understood the mother's feelings, and approached her to offer help. Soon, Yanwu successfully helped the woman find her child. Before parting, the woman expressed her gratitude to Yanwu. Yanwu mentioned that she had once had a child as well. However, these words were overheard by Mingrai, who was passing by. She couldn't believe it. Could it be that she had once had a child with Yun Chai? Yanwu didn't directly answer her question. She only reminded Mingrai that the two of them should go to a quiet place to talk. Euro had arranged to meet her grandmother at the company cafe. When her grandmother didn't show up, she called to check. To her surprise, Yanwu answered the phone. What made her even more panicked was that Yanwu had turned off her grandmother's phone. Euro was extremely worried about her grandmother's safety. She even began to imagine Yanwu harming her grandmother. The more she thought about it, the more frightened Euro became. So she quickly called Chondu for help and asked him to find out where Yanwu was, because she believed he had kidnapped her grandmother. Euro then told her father about the situation and asked him to find a way to rescue her grandmother. Insu didn't believe Yanwu would do such a thing, so he called her. After asking around, he found out that his mother was indeed with Yanwu. Insu warned Yanwu to bring his mother back immediately. Seeing this, Euro grabbed the phone and warned Yanwu not to touch his grandmother. Yanwu ignored him and hung up the phone. At that moment, Chondu tracked down Yanwu's location at the hospital. He said he would bring the police there there shortly. Mingrai learned from Yanwu that she had given birth to a child in prison. That child was Yunchai's child, and Yunchai didn't know about it. She asked where the child was now. Yanwu told her that the child had died. The one responsible for this tragedy was her granddaughter, Yuro. Mingrai initially refused to believe it, and even suspected that Yanwu was framing Yuro. Though she denied it on the surface, her heart couldn't deceive herself. Ultimately, she fainted from the shock. Yanwu rushed her to the hospital for treatment. Yuro and Insu hurried to the hospital, according to the address Chongdu had given them. They even brought the police to arrest Yanwu. Seeing this, Yanwu ignored them and prepared to leave. Mingrai explained that Yanwu hadn't done anything to her. She had fainted suddenly, which is why she had been taken to the hospital. Hearing this, Yuro was clearly disappointed. She had originally wanted to use this as an excuse to have Yanwu sent back to prison. But this time, her grandmother directly told her granddaughter to let her go. After Yanwu left, Mingrai urgently asked her granddaughter to tell the truth. She asked Yuro if what Yanwu had told her was true. Yuro tried to make excuses, but Insu, who was standing by, didn't want to deceive her mother, and revealed everything she knew. Mingrai was utterly disappointed in her granddaughter's actions. She hoped her granddaughter would treat Taeyeon as her own child. Since she couldn't have children, she should bring him back and adopt him. Meanwhile, Mary visited Konwoo's house, but as soon as she entered, she felt the house was familiar. She felt as though she had been there before. Even her long-lost son and daughter had appeared in this house. The sudden memories left her dizzy. Yunchai saw this and quickly helped Mary up. Mary didn't know that the man in front of her was actually her long-lost son. Konwoo's mother, Mingya, was very enthusiastic when she saw Mary for the first time. After all, the wealthy woman in front of her was her son's good friend. However, when Mary saw Mingya, it was as if she had seen a friend she hadn't seen in many years. So after dinner, Mary couldn't wait to start touring the house. She remarked that the house gave her an inexplicable sense of belonging, and that the layout of the house she had just bought was very similar to this one. Mingya explained that her husband had built the house for her, and that he had put a lot of effort into it, so the design had never gone out of style. Yunchai immediately corrected her stepmother's words, and explained that the house had been built by her father for his mother. But her stepmother sarcastically remarked that a woman who eloped doesn't deserve to be called a mother. Yunchai, hearing her stepmother insult her mother, immediately warned her. The mother and son began to argue. Meanwhile, Mary was lost in thought. Feeling uncomfortable with Konwoo's mother's words, she suggested leaving. Yunchai offered to drive Mary home himself. However, as soon as Mary got into the car, a flood of memories came rushing back. It seemed as though someone had tricked her into getting into the car and demanded her life. The memories were vague, causing Mary's head to ache intensely. It felt as though she had been in an accident in the car back then, leading to the tragedy of today. Yunchai saw Mary screaming in the backseat and quickly turned around to check on her. However, this action nearly caused a car accident. Fortunately, he managed to grab the steering wheel in time. In the end, they only collided with the grass by the roadside. However, Mary hit her head in the collision. Yunchai rushed her to the hospital after she fainted. Surprisingly, the car accident helped Mary regain her lost memories. It turned out that 25 years ago, Mary and Mingya were close friends. Mingya had always wanted to replace Mary. She deceived Mary by claiming that her husband and children had been in a car accident while traveling abroad. She had already bought Mary a ticket and told her to leave immediately. Mary, trusting her friend, quickly got into the driver's car and headed to the airport. However, Mary never expected that the driver had been bribed by Mingya. He took her to a desolate place and attempted to kill her. To ensure Mary died knowing the truth, the driver revealed the entire plot between him and Mingya. Afterward, he set the car on fire. He watched as Mary was engulfed by the flames. Fortunately, Mary was discovered and saved. She underwent numerous surgeries to reconstruct her face. This incident caused her to lose her memory. When Mary woke up in the hospital room, her pain and hatred surged to the surface. She even lost her mind, desperately searching for her two unfortunate children. It was only through Yanwu's comfort that she gradually regained her composure. When Mary saw her biological son standing before her, her emotions completely broke down. What was even more unbearable for Mary was that her daughter was already dead. Thinking about this caused her to faint once again. Seeing Mary's reaction, no one knew what had happened. Yuro knew that Mary had always disliked her, so she decided to use this opportunity to impress Mary. She asked her grandmother to prepare some nutritious food and send it to the hospital. She believed that this would surely win Mary's favor. However, Mary had already learned from Yanwu that Yuro was the one who had killed her daughter. Facing the person who had taken her daughter's life, Mary naturally had no kindness toward her. Not only did she reject the food Yuro had brought, but also told her to get out. Seeing Mary's attitude, Yuro was terrified. Daring not to provoke Mary, she could only leave in disgrace. grace. After recovering her health, Mary immediately rushed to her daughter's funeral hall. When she saw her child's photo placed alongside her own, she was heartbroken. It turned out her child had never forgotten her mother. It was just that this time she had returned too late. Thinking of her pitiful child filled Mary with unbearable pain. To find out the cause of her daughter's death, Mary called Yanwoo over to ask about the details of Yoonhee's car accident, claiming she was just curious about the incident. Since she claimed she didn't kill Yoonhee, she at least needed evidence to prove her innocence. So Yanwoo presented the audio evidence, which was the conversation where her mother, after regaining her memory, accused Yuro of all the crimes. At that moment, Mary finally knew who the real murderer of her daughter was, so she immediately agreed to help Yanwoo seek revenge, to make the true culprit pay for their crimes. After that, Mary rushed to meet her son, but now wasn't the time to reveal their true identities. She could only ask Yoon-chae about his biological mother's circumstances. However, Yoon-chae had always believed that his mother had abandoned the family for a man. Over the years, he had harbored deep hatred toward his mother. When Mary asked him about it, Yoon-chae refused to elaborate. Seeing her son harboring such resentment toward her for all these years, Mary was not only heartbroken but also furious, because all of this was the tragedy caused by Mingya. So she decided that day to go to Mingja's house to settle the score. She immediately revealed her true identity. Upon hearing this, Mingya was so frightened that she backed away repeatedly. Mary, seeing her guilty expression, flew into a rage. She wanted to grab a fruit knife and kill Mingya. However, everything that had just happened was merely Mary's fantasy. After all, it wasn't time to reveal her true identity yet. Mingya was delighted to see Mary visiting her home. She enthusiastically brought out fruits to entertain her. She even suggested that Mary could stay at her house for now. Once her newly purchased house was renovated, she could move in later. Mary naturally didn't refuse, because she was eager to stay and punish Mingya properly. Seeing that Mary was willing to move in, Mingya was overjoyed. She believed that pleasing the company's investors would help her son, but Mingya didn't realize that her actions had brought a nightmare upon herself. Mary wanted to move in with her son as soon as possible. That night, she moved into the house without hesitation. Yanwoo, as her agent, naturally followed her and moved in as well. With two distinguished guests suddenly arriving at the house, Mingya felt very honored. She immediately took Mary upstairs to show her around. She even prepared a large feast to entertain the two of them. However, during dinner, Mary deliberately ordered Mingya around. Not only did she make her pour tea and water, and even deliberately dropped her spoon on the floor during the meal. Mingya served her like a maid, carefully attending to her every need. However, by the end of the meal, Mingya was drenched in sweat. Although she felt resentful, she dared only vent her frustration to Kanwoo. Kanwoo explained that Mary was used to being waited on hand and foot, and that Mingya would have to put up with it for her sake. That day, Mingya suddenly received a text message from a mysterious person, asking to meet her, and signing their name as Huilan. Seeing the name Huilan shocked Mingya. She suddenly remembered her friend who had died 25 years ago, and even thought someone was playing a prank. Just then, she received a call from a stranger, saying that her son had just been in a car accident, and was in critical condition at the hospital. Mingya panicked upon hearing that her son was in danger. She rushed out of the house. She was about to drive to the hospital, but the car wouldn't start. Just then, she received another text message. She realized she had been tricked. As she tried to escape, the car windows were locked tight. Soon, the car started to catch fire. Mingya screamed for help. However, Mary was standing far away, watching the scene with a smug expression. She wanted Mingya to experience the same despair she had felt back then. Just as Mary thought she had finally gotten rid of the threat, her own son appeared at the front door. Yoon-chae didn't like his stepmother, but when he saw she was in danger, he immediately stepped forward and rescued her. He then took her to the hospital. Kanwoo, upon hearing about his mother's accident, rushed over in a panic. He also learned the cause of the accident from Yoon-chae. It turned out that the car suddenly caught fire due to an electrical malfunction. However, Mingya firmly insisted that the fire was not an accident. She was certain someone had tried to kill her. Kanwoo couldn't believe what he heard. He couldn't understand when his mother had ever wronged anyone. Just then, another text message sent Mingya into a panic. Feeling guilty, she insisted on being discharged from the hospital. From then on, Mingya would panic whenever she saw any incoming calls on her phone. When she finally answered the call in a state of fear, she realized it was just an insurance salesman. Meanwhile, Yuro suddenly received a call from Taeyeon's foster mother. She learned that the woman wanted to return to her country because her mother was ill. She hoped Yuro would allow her to bring the child back and asked her to help take care of her son for a while. With no other option, Yuro could only temporarily keep Taeyeon Taeyeon with her. The child, who really liked Yuro, gave her another drawing. He said he would look at it whenever he missed her. Since Taeyeon had nowhere to go, she took him home to be cared for by her grandmother. Mingrai and Insu were shocked when they saw the child. It turned out that the child had, indeed, been hidden by Yuro. They even remarked that the child really looked like his father. Just as Yuro was discussing with her family about keeping the child, someone suddenly rang the doorbell. Upon learning that it was Yanwoo, Yuro panicked. She hurriedly took Taeyeon upstairs and hit him. After all, Yanwoo was Taeyeon's biological mother. Under no circumstances could Yuro allow them to meet. Mingrai was worried that Yanwoo and Mary would discover the child in the house, so she made up an excuse and invited Mary to the study. Thus, Yanwoo followed Mary into the room. Seeing that the living room was empty, Yuro finally saw her chance to leave. Just as she was about to take the child to a hotel, Taeyong said that the painting he had given her had fallen next to the sofa. Yuro wanted to get angry at him when she heard this, but in the end, she forced herself to sneak back home. Sure enough, she found the painting in the corner of the sofa. When Yuro got to the door, she found that the child was gone. It turned out that Chongdu had seen Taeyong and took the opportunity to lure him into the car. He was going to take the child to his biological father. So when Yuro saw the message Chongdu sent her, she was terrified and rushed home to stop him. She couldn't let Yunchai find out about the child's existence, but by the time she got back, it was already too late. The father and son were standing in the living room, looking at each other. Yuro didn't want her husband to suspect the child's identity, so she lied and said that this was the woe she had been sponsoring all along. Yunchai was overjoyed to learn that the child in front of him was Taeyeon. When he heard the child say he was hungry, he immediately took him to the dining room. While eating, Yunchai noticed that Taeyong shared the same taste as him. Neither of them liked cucumbers. Yuro felt guilty seeing her husband so fond of the child, so she suggested adopting a child, but Yunchai didn't respond to his wife's suggestion at all. Although he liked Taeyeon, he didn't want to get too involved with his wife. From then on, Yunchai couldn't stop thinking about Taeyeon, who had eaten with him. He even wondered why such a cute child was an orphan. Out of curiosity, he asked his wife about Taeyeon's background. Since he already had adoptive parents, why did he need financial assistance? Yuro could only lie and say that their family was poor. If she didn't contribute, the couple probably couldn't afford to raise the child. After hearing his wife's explanation, Yunchai was half believing, half doubting. On the other side, Mary found out that Insu and lawyer Min were competing for the position of congressman. To completely ruin their relationship, she deliberately called lawyer Min to her office alone, and acted as if she supported him becoming a congressman. Lawyer Min saw that an extremely important voter was on his side, so he exposed Insu's secret of embezzlement and bribery. Yanwoo heard what she wanted to hear from lawyer Min, and immediately told her stepfather, hoping he would prepare to defeat lawyer Min in a decisive battle. Insu was furious upon learning that his former friend had betrayed him, and rushed to Mary's office that day to clarify the situation. But to his surprise, lawyer Min was already there. Yanwoo quickly explained that Mary had to leave on urgent business, and would be back soon. She then left the two of them in the office to wait. As soon as Yanwoo left, Insu and lawyer Min started arguing. While they were accusing each other, lawyer Min directly revealed that he had helped Insu frame Yanwoo 5 years ago. Little did they know that their conversation was being recorded by hidden camera. Yanwoo was extremely excited to have obtained the evidence of their crimes. Kanwoo saw Yanwoo smiling for the first time in a long time. He was so happy that he wanted to take her out to celebrate. While eating, Kanwoo touched the ring in his pocket. He really wanted to confess his feelings to Yanwoo. In the end, after dinner, he took out the ring. He then placed the ring on Yanwoo's finger. That day, Yunchai discovered the necklace he had once given to Yanwoo in his wife's drawer. As he wondered why the necklace was there, his wife's reaction was extremely unusual. Yuro, upon seeing the necklace, revealed an expression of sheer terror. Out of guilt, she even dropped the plate she was holding onto the ground. This necklace was the one Yanwoo had given to her son while in prison. Later, after swapping the baby, Yuro took the necklace and hid it in the drawer. Facing her husband's questioning, Yuro didn't know how to explain. In the end, she lied and said the necklace was a gift from Yanwoo to her. To avoid her husband constantly asking about it, Yuro snatched the necklace from his hand and threw it into the drawer. She then hurriedly cleaned up the mess on the floor and fled the room. She was afraid that staying another minute would expose her lie. Now, Yuro's greatest concern was that her husband would take the necklace to ask Yanwoo about it. At that point, her lie would be exposed. However, since Yanwoo had just been proposed to by Kanwoo, Yuro guessed that her husband wouldn't go to verify the matter at this time. Therefore, she planned to take the necklace that night and hide it. Just as she was about to act, she noticed Yunchai staring at her. With no other option, Yuro decided to rest and wait until the next morning. However, when she woke up the next day, she discovered that the necklace had already been taken by Yunchai. Yuro was completely panicked. She feared that her husband would take the necklace to confront Yanwoo. To prevent this from happening, Yuro called Yanwoo in advance and told him not to meet her husband, She said that she and Kangwoo were about to get married, so to avoid misunderstandings, he should keep his distance from Yunchai. Yanwoo found this completely baffling, so he didn't bother to respond. Seeing that Yanwoo was ignoring her request, Yuro panicked and rushed to the company to supervise her husband, only to discover that he hadn't come to work that day. What made her even more distraught was that Yanwoo wasn't in the office either. In fact, Yanwoo was at the hospital visiting his mother. Because he was worried that Yuro would try to harm his mother again, Kangwoo had specially arranged for two bodyguards to stay at the hospital room. At that moment, Yanwoo suddenly received a call from Yunchai, saying he had something important to discuss with her. Yunchai knew that Yanwoo was about to become his sister-in-law. At this point, he could only offer his blessings and had no right to say anything else. Yunchai then returned the necklace to Yanwoo, hoping she would accept it again. It was because he had failed to keep his promise to protect her. He believed that Yanwoo would be happy after marrying Kangwoo. But Yanwoo didn't hear what Yunchai was saying. She was curious about where the necklace in Yunchai's hand came from. Yunchai looked confused and said, "Didn't you give it to Yuro?" Yanwoo explained that it was not true. Then she took the necklace from the table. Yanwoo knew that the necklace had been worn around her son's neck back then. Now it had appeared in Yuro's house. This proved that her son's death was truly connected to her. Before, she had only suspected her. This time, she finally confirmed that Yuro was the one who had caused her son's death. So Yanwoo immediately called Yuro out. She placed the necklace in front of her and demanded an explanation. Why was this necklace in her husband's hands? Yuro didn't answer directly. She was only worried about what Yanwoo had told her husband. Yanwoo, seeing her expression, slapped her angrily. How dare she ruin someone else's life just to get a man? Back then, she had desperately denied knowing Taeyeon. Now that the necklace was in her hands, how could she explain it? What made Yanwoo even more furious was that she was only worried about her husband finding out about this. Since she was so afraid, she would go tell Yunchai the whole truth. Yuro immediately begged for mercy, hoping Yanwoo would forgive her. Yanwoo pushed her away and left. Yuro chased after her outside. Unbeknownst to her, she risked her life to stop Yanwoo from revealing the truth. Little did she know that Yunchai had already discovered another secret. Because Yunchai had long suspected his wife was hiding something from him, so he found Taeyi and asked him to tell him the truth. Since he had been investigating the real culprit behind Yoonhee's death all along, he must have some evidence in his possession over the years. Seeing that Yunchai had finally come to his senses, Taeyi no longer held anything back from him. He told Yunchai about Chondu and Yuro's collusion. If he didn't believe him, he should investigate Yuro's bank transfer records. Upon hearing this, Yunchai immediately rushed back home. He immediately took out his wife's savings book. After checking, it was exactly as Taeyi had said. It turned out that Yuro had been transferring money to Chondu all these years. The first transfer of 4 billion won was on the day his sister died. Clearly, Yuro was hiding something. To get to the bottom of this matter, Yunchai went to his wife's parents' house to ask his father-in-law for information. As soon as he entered the house, he heard his grandmother and stepmother talking. Because the grandmother had been at odds with her in-laws in the company's shareholder meeting, Ming-ya, in a fit of anger, told Ming-raya about Yuro's involvement in harming her stepmother and forging the will. She warned her that if she continued to oppose her, she would expose her granddaughter's crimes. After all, this was an attempted murder. Ming-rai was deeply shocked upon hearing this. Although she knew her granddaughter had committed a crime, she never imagined she would also harm her own stepmother. However, their conversation was overheard by Yunchai at the door. At that moment, he realized his wife had been deceiving him all these years. It turned out his sister's death was indeed closely connected to her. Thinking back to Yuro's deceitful demeanor at the time, Yunchai was furious. Upon returning home, he secretly installed surveillance cameras in the bedroom. He believed this would definitely provide more evidence of his wife's crimes. After everything was set up, he went to his father-in-law's house and brought his wife, who had been recovering from a car accident at her parents' home, back to their house to rest. Then Yunchai deliberately found an excuse to leave the house. Sure enough, as soon as he left, Yuro called her grandmother and told her about the motorcycle accident. She believed this was the only way to stop Yanwoo from revealing the truth. Sure enough, her plan worked. So far, her husband seems unaware of anything. However, Yuro doesn't know that everything she said was recorded by the surveillance camera. Meanwhile, Yunchai deliberately invited Chondu out for a drink. He believed Chondu was the police officer who investigated his sister's car accident years ago. He even helped him find his biological mother. The fact that the same police officer was involved in both incidents felt like fate. Therefore, Yunchai openly cried in front of Chondu about her own experiences. As a child, she lost her mother completely due to moving abroad. Later, she tragically lost her beloved younger sister. All these events were caused by her own actions. Chondu felt sympathy for Yunchai's situation. Seeing him drunk, he called Yuro over to take him home. Yuro was in instantly panicked upon seeing her husband with Chandu. She rushed over without caring about her injured foot. When she saw her husband drunk, she immediately accused Chandu of saying something earlier. Chandu claimed he hadn't said anything. However, he accidentally revealed the truth that Yoon had been killed by Euro. Yoon Chai wasn't drunk at that moment. He could only clench his fists and listen to their conversation. He even recalled how Euro had framed Yanwoo in front of him back then. It turned out she had colluded with the police to frame Yanwoo. At the time, no matter how Yanwoo explained himself, he chose not to believe her. In that moment, Yoon Chai felt guilty toward Yanwoo, but he felt even more guilty toward his own sister. 5 years had passed without the real killer being punished. In the end, it was his beloved wife who was wrongfully imprisoned for 5 years. However, even after learning the truth, Yoon Chai did not expose his wife's actions. He hadn't gathered enough evidence yet. He could only find Tae-yi to discuss how to bring the bad guys to justice. Tae-yi had been monitoring Chandu all along. He knew that Chandu had a private safe. He suspected that the evidence was stored in that safe. The two decided to set a trap for Chandu to obtain the evidence. They deliberately hired a group of people to stage a fake car accident. When Chandu arrived at the scene to investigate, the victim claimed that the driver had fled the scene. His behavior seemed like he was drunk driving, and he deliberately lied that the driver was a wealthy woman. Upon hearing that the driver was a wealthy woman, Chandu's expression immediately changed. Sure enough, the next day, Tae-yi sent someone to pretend to be the brother of the person who caused the accident. He acted as if he wanted to settle the matter and pulled out a large sum of money. The moment Chandu saw the money, his eyes lit up. He didn't hesitate and stuffed it into his pocket. However, Chandu didn't know that his act of bribery had been caught on surveillance cameras. Soon, Chandu received a threatening text message from Tae-yi, even revealing his current address. Chandu, enraged by the threat, went to confront him, only to discover that the other party had a video of him accepting the bride and was using it to blackmail him into handing over the evidence from a car accident in exchange. Otherwise, he would hand the video over to the police. Upon hearing this, Chandu realized he had been tricked, so he lied, claiming he hadn't left any evidence from back then. But Tae-yi immediately exposed his lie. Because he had already sent someone to follow him, he knew where Chandu had hidden the evidence. Discovering his secret made Chandu feel uneasy, so he threatened Tae-yi by pretending to be a police officer. After warning him, he angrily fled the scene, fearing that Tae-yi might steal the evidence. He had no choice but to open his safe, take out the evidence, and move it to another location. However, his actions had already been tracked, so when he entered the restaurant for lunch, Tae-yi arrived at the restaurant with 2 bodyguards. Chandu, seeing this, quickly packed his things and fled again, because he had all the evidence to control Euro in his hands. To prevent them from taking it, he quickly threw it into a doghouse. When Tae-yi caught him, he naturally didn't see what he was looking for. No matter how harshly he tortured him, he got nothing. With no other options, Tae-yi had no choice but to let him go. But what Chandu didn't expect was that the evidence he had hidden in the doghouse had vanished. Panicked, he asked the dog's owner about it, but the owner claimed not to have seen it. Furious, Chandu vented his anger on the dog in front of him. At that moment, he never imagined that the evidence had been taken by Yoon Chai. Seeing all the evidence pointing to his wife as the murderer laid out before him, Yoon Chai was consumed by rage. He took the evidence to Tae-yi. Upon inspection, they found not only Euro's ankle chain but also Yoon Hee's button, and even the voice recording of Changdo's call. Tae-yi suggested handing over the evidence to Yanwoo to handle. However, Yoon Chai felt it wasn't the right time yet. He believed it would be better to wait until the crucial moment to present it. To be on the safe side, Yoon Chai stored the evidence on his computer. Meanwhile, Changdu told Euro about his kidnapping. Upon hearing this, Euro fell into panic. She was worried that Euro might have told Tae-yi something. Out of fear, she immediately rushed to Tae-yi's office to investigate. To her surprise, her husband was also there. Seeing his wife arrive at the right moment, Yoon Chai took Euro directly to the scene of the accident where Yoon Hee had been involved. He intentionally made her recall the details of the accident. However, Euro, feeling guilty, dared not face the past. She believed that something that had happened 6 years ago should not be brought up again. However, Yoon Chai insisted on finding the real culprit. Her husband's unusual behavior made Euro suspect something was wrong. She called Chandu over to discuss the matter. She didn't want her husband to discover that she was the real culprit. Therefore, the father and daughter planned to buy the evidence from Chandu. They were afraid that the evidence might fall into Yoon Chai's hands. Chandu, of course, wouldn't tell them the truth that the evidence was lost, so he made up an excuse to brush it off. After learning the truth, Yoon Chai took the initiative to apologize to Yanwoo. He said he would reopen the investigation into his sister's case. Yanwoo listened to Yoon Chai's apology, but felt nothing. After all, a simple "I'm sorry" couldn't undo the injustice she had suffered. Even if she chose to believe him now, what difference would it make? She had already given up on Yoon Chai completely. On the other side, Kangwoo hired a detective to investigate and discovered that the man who set fire to his mother's car was closely associated reunited with Mary. Upon hearing this, Conwoo was also deeply shocked. To get to the bottom of things, he began secretly following Mary. Sure enough, after following her, he saw her meeting with the arsonist in private. But when Mary saw Conwoo, she didn't seem surprised at all. It turned out she had done this to let Conwoo know the truth. Mary immediately told Conwoo that Mingya was her enemy. Conwoo never imagined his mother could be such a cruel woman. Feeling guilty, he could only kneel down and apologize to Mary on his mother's behalf. But by this point, Mary had already come to hate Mingya with all her heart. If she wanted forgiveness, Mingya had to return everything. Then the mother and son would disappear quietly from sight forever. Only then would she forget the hatred. Mary hoped they would disappear completely in 2 weeks. Conwoo was instantly plunged into agony. In the end, he fainted in the office from the shock. Yanwoo noticed his condition and realized he had a high fever, so she and Yunchai took Conwoo home to rest. The next day, Mary told Yanwoo the truth about Conwoo. She even revealed the conditions she had proposed. She believed that, given Conwoo's character, he would definitely be able to fulfill them. Mary hoped Yanwoo would not consider dating Conwoo. Their collaboration was all about bringing the bad guys to justice. That day, Conwoo broke up with Yanwoo. He hated his mother for what she had done in the past, but as her son, he couldn't cut ties with her. After much thought, he had no choice but to end things with Yanwoo. Yanwoo apologized for keeping Mary's identity a secret from him. She only recently found out that Mary was Yunchai's mother. Conwoo knows that all the blame lies with his mother. It was she who destroyed Mary's family. Now he must atone for his mother's sins. Originally, Conwoo had planned to protect Yanwoo for the rest of his life. In the end, he couldn't do it. Ultimately, Conwoo decided to pack everything up and leave with his mother forever. Since Yunchai found out that his wife was the one who killed his sister, he deliberately mentioned the necklace she had lost at the accident scene in front of Euro. He said he hadn't seen her wear it in all these years. Euro panicked upon hearing this. She hurriedly explained that she had lost it herself. To cover up her guilt, she suggested that her husband buy her another one. Seeing the woman lying so blatantly, Yunchai felt sick to his stomach. He even looked down on her with contempt before leaving the room. However, her husband's words also made Euro suspicious. Why did he specifically mention the ankle chain he had given her? At that moment, Euro began to wonder if the evidence was still in Chondo's possession. However, Chondu, determined to retrieve the evidence, disguised himself as an employee of a home security company and infiltrated Taeyi's house. He didn't realize that all his actions had been witnessed by Taeyi's bodyguard. Later, Chondu sneaked into the room and searched everywhere for evidence. After searching for a while, he finally found what he was looking for. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was around, he hurriedly escaped through the back door. Once inside the car, Chondu realized he had been tricked by Taeyi. The DVD he had gone to such lengths to steal was actually an animated film. At that moment, he was furious. Just then, Euro called. She asked if he still had the evidence. Chondu no longer wanted to hide the truth. He admitted that he had lost the evidence, and that it was most likely stolen by Taeyi. Euro fell into a panic. She suspected that the evidence was now in her husband's hands. From then on, Euro began to closely monitor her husband's every move. Even when he answered a phone call, she hid behind to eavesdrop. When she heard Yunchai talking on the phone with Yanwoo, Euro became even more certain that the evidence was in her husband's hands, so she took the opportunity when her husband wasn't around to secretly look through his bag. When her husband rushed over and asked her what she was doing, she hurriedly made up an excuse to cover it up. Seeing her husband's attitude, Euro guessed that the evidence must be in the bag, so she hurriedly told Chondu about it, and asked him to find an opportunity to take the evidence from Yunchai's hands. Chondu received the message and immediately rode his motorcycle over. When he saw Yunchai get out of the car, he snatched the bag from his hands right there on the street. Yunchai saw this and rushed after him, but was hit by a car. Yanwoo saw this and panicked. Rushing over, she hurriedly took Yunchai to the hospital. Chondu, seeing that he had caused trouble again, was so scared he didn't know what to do. At that moment, Euro was only worried about whether the evidence had fallen into Yanwoo's hands. She called Chondu and learned that her husband had been in a car accident. Euro was terrified and rushed to the hospital. At that moment, Chondu sent her a text message. He said the physical evidence wasn't in the bag. He told her to check if the evidence was on her husband's body. Seeing this message, Euro was completely thrown off balance. She hurriedly found a nurse to get her husband's clothes back. However, the nurse said that the clothes had already been picked up by someone else. She pointed to the person in front of her who had taken the clothes. Euro realized that Taeyi had taken the clothes. She was so scared that she rushed into the ward to get her husband's clothes back. Taeyi saw Euro's actions and knew what she was up to. Therefore, he didn't linger and left in a hurry. Yuro searched everywhere with Yoon Chae's clothes. In the end, she found nothing. In desperation, she went to Yoon Chae's car to look for it, but she still couldn't find the evidence. Yuro didn't know that the evidence was already in Yanwoo's hands. It turned out that Yoon Chae had given the items to Yanwoo during the car accident, hoping she would use them to clear her name. After collecting the evidence, Yanwoo urgently contacted a journalist. She planned to use the evidence for a special column. She intended to expose In-soo and Yuro's crimes to the entire nation. Chon-do, having lost the evidence, had no choice but to flee the country. However, he didn't know he was already being targeted. Tae-yi tracked him down to the pier and arrested him on the spot. After Tae-yi's relentless interrogation, Chon-do finally admitted to hitting Yoon Chae. This time, he was willing to confess all his crimes. Tae-yi obtained Chon-do's ill-gotten gains and immediately handed them over to Yoon Chae. All of these items were money extorted from In-soo and his daughter. Seeing that his wife had been hiding so many evil deeds from him all these years, Yoon Chae swore that she would make her pay. If he remained silent, it would be tantamount to condoning his wife's crimes. So, as soon as he returned home, he confronted his wife, asking if she had instructed Chon-do to steal his bag. However, faced with her husband's accusations, Yuro firmly denied everything. Yoon Chae couldn't take it anymore. In a fit of anger, he turned on the home surveillance camera. Seeing the footage, Yuro panicked and claimed the video was fake. Yoon Chae was completely enraged. Realizing she couldn't hide the truth anymore, Yuro immediately knelt before her husband and begged for forgiveness. Yoon Chae refused to forgive his wife. In a fit of rage, he packed her luggage and told her to go back to her parents' home. Their marriage was about to end. Meanwhile, In-soo, who was running for a seat in the National Assembly, called a reporter to his home to interview him about how honest and selfless he was. Just as he was praising himself in front of the reporter, King-soo, who had recovered from his illness, suddenly burst in. In-soo and Ming-rai were terrified and ended the interview. King-soo had come to tell Ming-rai the truth. He wanted her to know what her son and granddaughter had been up to all these years. After all, it was Yuro who had killed Yoon-hee. It was his son who had framed his own daughter. Ming-rai couldn't believe what she was hearing. She never imagined that Yuro was the real culprit who killed Yoon-hee. Unable to accept this fact, Ming-rai nearly fainted from anger. King-soo told them to prepare themselves mentally. This time, she would definitely take them to court and make In-soo and Yuro face the consequences. Just as Ming-rai was still questioning King-soo's words, she suddenly received a call from her mother-in-law. It turned out that Yuro refused to leave her in-law's home. Ming-yop told her to bring her granddaughter back immediately. In the end, Yuro was persuaded by her grandmother and brought back home. The grandmother also learned from Yuro that everything King-soo had said was true. However, Yuro showed no remorse. She begged her grandmother to help her think of a way to save the situation. So Ming-rai called Yanwoo over to apologize to her in person, hoping she would spare In-soo and Yuro, and promising to help Yanwoo start a cosmetics company. However, no matter how sincere Ming-rai's apology was, Yanwoo was determined not to back down. Seeing that Yanwoo had not changed her mind, Ming-rai took out a large bag of cash, trying to get Yanwoo to stop. Yanwoo, seeing this, ignored her and left in a hurry. Yoon Chae was worried that the evidence in Yanwoo's possession might be targeted by others, so he reminded Yanwoo again to hide the items properly. Chon-do and Yuro would never give up so easily. However, Yuro saw the two of them standing on the side of the road talking. Jealous, she wanted to run Yanwoo over. Just as she stepped on the gas pedal to act, Yanwoo suddenly got into a taxi and left in a hurry. At that moment, Yuro finally came to her senses. Because she knew the evidence was in Yanwoo's hands, she followed him secretly. Sure enough, this time she discovered a big secret. It turned out that the reporter who interviewed her father was arranged by Yanwoo, and the purpose of this program was to expose her father's and her crimes. Listening to their conversation, Yuro realized that she and her family had been deceived. Panicked, she rushed home to tell her family about it. If this program aired, their family would be ruined. With no other option, In-soo had to seek help from his superior. He used his power to stop the TV station from airing the program. Soon, Yanwoo received the news. Learning that the news he had meticulously planned had been abruptly cancelled, Yanwoo, unwilling to accept this, sought out the program director. Ultimately, her tragic circumstances changed the director's mind, so he decided to secretly air the program without telling anyone. Upon hearing this, Yoon Chae immediately handed over the evidence she had to Yanwoo, believing that these items might help her. Yuro thought the program her father had recorded wouldn't air. She triumphantly invited Yanwoo out to gloat, but she discovered that Yoon Chae had given the surveillance footage to Yanwoo. Panicked, she rushed to the company to confront her husband about why he did this. However, Yoon Chae refused to acknowledge her. He directly handed her the divorce papers and demanded she sign them, but Yuro refused to agree to the divorce under any circumstances. Meanwhile, Yanwoo built a small tombstone for her son. She brought cake and flowers to celebrate his 6th birthday. However, this was accidentally discovered by Yoon Chae. It turned out that Yoon Chae had called Sue because he couldn't reach Yanwoo. Sue said that her sister had had gone to the small forest to pay respects to the child. Yun-chai found this strange. He hurriedly asked Sue where her sister was. Seeing this, Sue told Yun-chai the address. Thus, Yun-chai found Yanwu. Upon seeing the name Taeyeon carved on the tree, Yun-chai curiously asked Yanwu what was going on. Seeing that Yun-chai finally knew about his son, Yanwu decided to no longer hide the truth from him. After learning the truth, Yun-chai was heartbroken and collapsed on the ground, filled with guilt. He went to Yanwu's mother to apologize. It was his fault for not protecting Yanwu and the child back then. That's why Yanwu was wrongfully imprisoned for 5 years. King Su, seeing this, subtly helped Yun-chai to his feet. She blamed herself for marrying the wrong person, which led to her daughter suffering all this. What Yun-chai cared about most now was how his son had died. Because Yanwu never told him, he hoped Young-soon would tell him everything she knew. Young-soon accused Yun-chai of causing Yanwu so much pain over the years. Taeyong's death was also his wife's doing. Yun-chai never expected this matter to be connected to Yuro as well. He immediately went to find Yuro and demanded to know what she had done to Taeyong. Ming-rai, who was standing nearby, was about to reveal the truth, but Yuro stopped her grandmother in time and explained that she had given Taeyong up for adoption to give him a better upbringing. However, Yun-chai didn't believe a word of it. Before leaving, he swore that he would make Yuro pay for what she had done. Yuro was completely devastated. After hearing this, Ming-rai confronted her granddaughter, asking why she didn't let her speak the truth. Yuro explained that she absolutely couldn't let her husband know that Taeyong was still alive. She didn't want her husband and Yanwu to reconcile because of the child. The grandmother couldn't understand why her granddaughter was so stubborn. Meanwhile, Insu learned that Yanwu had contacted the TV station to expose his program, which was being secretly recorded. With no other options, he had no choice but to curry favor with his superior to handle the matter. Ultimately, due to the power of money and authority, the TV station had no choice but to cancel the program once again. The editor-in-chief even faced disciplinary action over the incident. Even the reporters who had been following the story were suspended. Yanwu realized she couldn't defeat her stepfather, so she decided to try another tactic. She gathered her relatives and friends at the TV station to post flyers and protest to expose his stepfather's crimes, and requested the public's help in protesting to ensure the program aired as scheduled. She did this to leverage public opinion to pressure her superiors. Meanwhile, Yun-chai couldn't accept his son's death, so he took his wife to the welfare center where Taeyong was adopted. He wanted Yuro to reenact the process of adopting the child. Just as Yuro was at a loss, the director brought out the documents of the child who had been switched with Taeyong. Recalling the past, Yun-chai realized that Taeyong was still alive. He hurriedly asked his wife where she had hidden Taeyong. However, Yuro denied that Taeyong was his son. Yun-chai, seeing this, warned her that if she dared to lie, she would make her pay the price. However, as soon as Yun-chai left, Yuro immediately contacted Taeyong's adoptive mother and demanded that she buy plane tickets and take the child abroad immediately. On the other side, Yun-chai, unable to get her wife to reveal where Taeyong was hidden, could only monitor Yuro's movements to prevent her husband from reuniting with Taeyong. Yuro had already purchased plane tickets for the adoptive mother and the child to leave the country. Fearing something might go wrong along the way, she contacted Chondu for help. She hoped he could accompany Taeyong abroad. She was worried that her husband would definitely chase after them once he found out. Just then, Yuro suddenly noticed her husband following behind. Panicked, she quickly informed Chondu of the situation, hoping he could rush to the airport to take the child away, while she found a way to lure her husband elsewhere. Chondu, seeing the situation, could only follow her instructions. Yuro believed that changing the route would prevent her husband from going to the airport, but she didn't realize that the road sign had already exposed her original plan. So Yun-chai ignored his wife's actions and drove straight toward the airport. He then approached the staff to check the passenger list for today's flight. He quickly confirmed Taeyong's name. However, Chondu appeared in time to stop Taeyong from leaving and took them away under the pretext of being Yuro's friend. Yun-chai still couldn't find his son. With no other option, he took the child's photo to the airport surveillance cameras to search for him. Sure enough, a familiar figure appeared before his eyes. It was Chondu, who had come to the airport to take Taeyong away. He immediately contacted Tae to help find Chondu's whereabouts. Yun-chai then called Yanwu out. He had decided to tell Yanwu that the child was still alive. Yanwu was shocked upon hearing this. To make Yanwu believe him, Yun-chai told her everything that had happened to him with Yuro over the past few days. He then took out the photo he had taken at the airport and handed it to Yanwu. Upon seeing the photo, Yanwu completely lost control of her emotions. Because she had met this child once before at the orphanage, she never expected that he wouldn't recognize his own son. Yanwu then rushed to Yuro's family home in a frenzy and immediately asked Ming-rai where Yuro was. Ming-rai said that Yuro had left early in the morning and asked them what they were doing there suddenly. Yanwu didn't believe her at all. She searched the house but couldn't find Yuro anywhere. In a fit of emotion, she begged Ming-rai to tell her the truth. After Yanwu's pleading, Ming-rai finally softened her heart. She admitted that Yuro had taken Taeyeon away and hidden him all those years ago. Yanwoo, enraged, scolded Mingrai for her actions. Seeing this, Mingrai promised that once she contacted Yuro, she would bring the child back. Meanwhile, Yuro temporarily settled the two of them in a private residence. Kangwoo had originally planned to take his mother abroad to live for the next few days. When he saw Yanwoo facing all kinds of difficulties, he decided to stay and help Yanwoo. At the same time, he also brought Yanwoo some good news. The protests that everyone had been staging at the TV station had finally paid off. The higher-ups had finally withdrawn the order to suspend the program. The news exposing the stepfather's crimes was broadcast as scheduled. Yanwoo was overjoyed to hear the news. On the other side, Insu grew anxious upon learning that the higher-ups were no longer obstructing the matter. If the program Yanwoo had been promoting were exposed, his life would be ruined. Yuro also saw Yanwoo's video on TV, claiming that the truth from years ago would be revealed in a few days. This sent Yuro into a panic. To prevent the news from being exposed, she proactively contacted Yanwoo and offered Taeyeon as a bargaining chip to force Yanwoo to cancel the program, or else she would never see Taeyeon again. Seeing this, Yanwoo had no choice but to agree. To get her son back from Yuro, she had to hand over the criminal evidence as demanded. Yanwoo believed this would allow her to reunite with her son. Little did she know that she had once again been outmaneuvered by Yuro. It turned out that Chondu had called her in advance to inform her that Yanwoo had not cancelled the program. She had merely postponed the news report. After investigating, she discovered Yuro's scheme. Upon learning this, Yuro seized the evidence from Yanwoo's hands because she had no intention of telling Yanwoo where the child was. Instead, she randomly wrote down an address and gave it to Yanwoo. Although Yanwoo had her suspicions about the address, in order to find her son, she had no choice but to trust Yuro. Just as Yuro was about to flee the scene with the evidence, Yoon Chai suddenly appeared and grabbed her tightly. He suspected that his wife was deceiving Yanwoo, so he demanded that she personally bring the child to them. Ultimately, under Yoon Chai's coercion, Yuro had no choice but to take them to the real address. Along the way, she quickly sent a text message to Taeyeon's foster mother to pack their belongings immediately and leave the child at a nearby restaurant for safekeeping. While Yoon Chai was refueling the car, she quickly got out and tried to escape. Yanwoo saw this and rushed to stop her. Yuro took the opportunity to run toward the private car ahead. By the time Yoon Chai caught up, she lied that someone was trying to kidnap her and begged the driver to drive away quickly. Seeing this, Yoon Chai could only split up with Yanwoo. When Yanwoo arrived at the villa, she discovered that the child was already gone. She demanded that the woman hand over Taeyeon. At that moment, the woman realized that Yanwoo was the child's biological mother. After Yanwoo's desperate pleas, the woman revealed that Taeyeon had been secretly taken away by Yuro. By the time Yanwoo chased after them, they had already gotten into the car and fled. To make Taeyeon cooperate, Yuro lied that she was taking the child on a trip. Taeyeon, unaware of the truth, was overjoyed. To prevent her phone from being tracked, Yuro deliberately removed the battery and threw the phone by the roadside. However, as soon as she left, Tae located her phone's GPS. By the time Yanwoo and the others rushed over, they only found the abandoned phone by the roadside. Upon learning that Yuro had fled with the child, the police immediately issued an order to search for Yuro's license plate number. However, unexpectedly, Yuro abandoned the car halfway through the journey. Carrying her luggage and Taeyeon, she prepared to flee to the countryside to catch Yuro sooner. Yanwoo led the police directly to Yuro's parents' home. Upon learning that her granddaughter is suspected of abducting a child, Mingrai looked utterly speechless. Just as she was about to defend Yuro, the police seized their phones and installed tracking software. As long as Yuro contacted her family, her location could be pinpointed immediately. Meanwhile, Mingrai and Ninsu learned through police investigations that they were not accomplices. Just as the two finally relaxed after hearing the police's words, Insu's real trouble began. It turned out that Insu had violated election laws and was summoned by the police. Mingrai watched her son being taken away by the police and was very anxious. Meanwhile, Yuro and Taeyong began their life on the run. Along the way, she not only bought new clothes for the child, but also took him to an amusement park for a fun-filled day. In truth, she had long since come to regard Taeyong as her own son. After playing until they were exhausted, the two found a small inn nearby to stay the night. However, while caring for Taeyong, she saw the news on the TV next to her reporting her father's corruption and bribery. Seeing that her father was under police investigation, Yuro feared her grandmother would not be able to accept the truth. She picked up the landline phone and decided to call her grandmother, but she didn't know that all the phones at home had been tapped by the police. The police urged Mingrai to convince Yuro to turn herself in. Only by doing so could they save her granddaughter. Mingrai knew that Yuro had broken the law, so after answering the call, she pleaded with her granddaughter to bring the child back. She hoped she wouldn't make another mistake. Only by turning herself in could she gain everyone's forgiveness. Yuro refused to do so photo at that moment. She even asked her grandmother if there were any police at home. Upon learning there were none, she told her grandmother not to meet Yanwu. She would handle matters and return home once she was done. Mingrai had intended to delay things. Unfortunately, her granddaughter had already hung up. Meanwhile, Kongwu had originally planned to fly abroad today. Just as he was saying goodbye to Taeyi and preparing to head to the airport, he accidentally overheard from Taeyi's phone that Taeyeon had been taken to the countryside by Euro to Hai. Seeing everyone worried about the child's safety, Kongwu had no choice but to contact the airline and postpone his flight to 10 p.m. He then rode his motorcycle to the nearby countryside to search for the child. When he took out Euro's photo and started looking for her, the shop owner recognized the woman in the photo. Little did he know that his actions had been seen by Euro behind him. Kongwu found out where the child was hiding and rushed over immediately. However, at that moment, Taeyeon, out of boredom, was playing with fire in the yard. When he threw the burning newspaper into the cellar, it accidentally started a fire. Since the front door was locked, Taeyeon couldn't escape. Neighbors saw smoke coming from the house and rushed to put out the fire with water. However, this scene was witnessed by Kongwu, who happened to be passing by. Without hesitation, he poured a bucket of water over himself and rushed into the house. At that moment, Yanwu and Yunchai arrived. Following the location, Kongwu found the child, then put his soaked clothes on Taeyeon. After protecting the child, he tried to rush out of the fire, but at that moment, a piece of wood fell and hit him. Yanwu heard the sound and tried to rush in to save her child. Yunchai pulled her back in time and rushed in herself. Kongwu used his last bit of strength to hand the child to Yunchai. He was pinned down by the wooden beam and couldn't move. After Taeyeon was rescued, Yunchai rushed back into the fire. However, Kongwu had already fallen unconscious in the blaze. Fortunately, Yunchai managed to move the wooden beam off him and rescue him. Despite the doctor's efforts, he was eventually declared brain dead with all organs failing. Given the dire situation, the patient could die at any moment. Yanwu was so shocked by the news that she couldn't stop crying. In the hospital room, she desperately encouraged Kongwu to hold on. Fortunately, Kongwu finally regained consciousness. He asked Yunchai to take good care of Yanwu and to forgive his mother for her past mistakes. Hearing this, Yunchai tightly grasped Kongwu's hand. He ordered him to live. Seeing his brother finally choose forgiveness, Kongwu couldn't help but smile slightly. But in the end, he couldn't make it through. He closed his eyes forever. After Kongwu's death, his mother scattered his ashes into the sea. In the midst of everyone's grief, they sent him off on his final journey. At that moment, Yanwu read the last letter Kongwu had left for her. She finally realized that the person who had been sending her letters from prison was Kongwu. No wonder he had been so kind to her after she was released. The man she had always wanted to see was right beside her all along. This unbearable truth plunged Yanwu into despair once again. To ensure that Yuro faced justice soon as possible, Yanwu used the evidence she had gathered to record a program, which was finally broadcast as scheduled. Yuro, who was on the run, was shocked when she saw the program. She could only hide in her rented apartment, too afraid to go out. But what she didn't expect was that Yunchai had already found her with Taeyi. When they showed the photo to the landlord to inquire about Yuro's whereabouts, they indeed found her hiding place. Yunchai stood at the door and reminded his wife not to run away. Surrendering herself voluntarily might result in a reduced sentence, but Yuro refused to accept it, so she made up her mind and jumped off the balcony. When the landlord came with the key and opened the door, they discovered that Yuro had already escaped through the back door. By the time the two of them chased her out, Yuro had already gotten into a taxi, but Yuro realized that the car was playing a recording of her crimes. She quickly contacted Chandu and asked him to pick her up. Since both of them were penniless and now wanted criminals, Chandu could only take Yuro to his brother's house to hide temporarily, but Yuro still showed no remorse. She took Yuro's hat and put on a small knife and prepared to fight Yanwu to the end. Yunchai and Taeyi were helpless because they hadn't caught Yuro. They guessed that she would never choose to turn herself in. However, on the way home, Taeyi confessed the truth to Yunchai. He said that Mary, who had been living in his house, was actually his biological mother. Today was the anniversary of his father's death. Mary should be waiting for him at home. Upon hearing this, Yunchai rushes home to confirm it. Sure enough, Mary is preparing offerings for her father. Upon seeing her son return home, Mary voluntarily reveals her true identity. She explains that her disappearance over the years was all due to Mingya. She tells Yunchai everything she has endured over the years. Yunchai feels deeply guilty for having hated the wrong person all this time. At that moment, mother and son were finally reunited. Mingya had been living in pain every day since losing her son. She regretted not listening to her son and leaving everything behind. Taeyong returned to Yanwu's side but was not happy. He still believed that his foster mother was his biological mother. Therefore, he refused to get close to Yanwu. Seeing this, the family decided to take the children out for a trip. Only by doing so could they bring the mother and son closer together. Tae also took the opportunity to call Yoon-chae out. She believed that children would be happier with both their father and mother by their side. In the end, thanks to Yan-woo's efforts, Taeyong quickly accepted her. Yoon-chae looked at her son and felt an urge to reconcile with Yan-woo. He truly hoped Yan-woo would give him another chance to give their child a complete family. Yan-woo understood Yoon-chae's thoughts, but didn't respond. Little did they know that the scene of the three of them together had been witnessed by Euro, who was hiding nearby. Driven by jealousy, he once again targeted Taeyong. Sure enough, Yan-woo wasn't paying attention. Taeyong was gone. She was so scared that she rushed around looking for him. Luckily, Euro hadn't taken Taeyong far, so she grabbed Euro and demanded that she give the child back. Euro couldn't accept that Yan-woo was so happy now. To get revenge on Yan-woo, she wanted to make him a murderer. After saying that, Euro was about to jump into the sea to commit suicide, but suddenly, she felt that dying alone wasn't worth it, so she tried to drag Yan-woo with her to die. But soon, Euro changed her mind. As they struggled, Yan-woo was pushed into the sea. She disappeared from sight in an instant. Euro was so scared, she didn't know what to do. Little did she know that Yan-woo had been swept away by a huge wave and washed ashore on another beach. Euro, in a daze, made her way to the car. She wanted to escape as quickly as possible due to the shock she had just experienced. Euro began to hallucinate. As she stepped on the gas pedal, she saw Yoon-hee, covered in blood, demanding her life. She even ordered her to go to the police station and turn herself in. Euro, terrified, ordered Yoon-hee to get out of the way. She then stepped on the gas pedal. However, her actions were witnessed by Yan-woo, who was searching for her. When he saw Euro driving the car into the sea, Yan-woo managed to rescue her. After Yan-woo's efforts, Euro was revived. However, when Euro opened her eyes, she was met with the consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, Chondu was caught by Tae before he could escape the country. The police arrived at the scene immediately and took him away. After being imprisoned, Euro refused to admit her guilt. She shouted and screamed in prison, claiming that she had been framed by Yan-woo. The next day, she demanded that her defense lawyer appeal her case. She promised that once she was released, she would reward him generously. However, the lawyer looked down on Euro's crimes. He advised her to confess and accept a reduced sentence. Euro's crimes had spread throughout South Korea. Even the female prisoners in the prison couldn't stand it anymore, so several people teamed up to beat Euro severely. Emotionally shattered, Euro decided to end her life in prison. But just as she was about to hang herself, she was discovered by the guards and saved. Soon, the court finally reopened and the trial of Yoon-hee's case from 6 years ago. In the face of all the evidence, Chong-do and In-soo admitted their actions. Only Euro refused to answer. But even if she didn't speak, her crimes couldn't be escaped. Ming-rai, seeing her granddaughter's attitude, tried to rush forward to plead for her. In-soo, seeing his mother kneeling and begging, was filled with regret. In the end, the judge pronounced the verdict based on the evidence. In-soo was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Chong-do was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Euro, having committed multiple crimes and showing no remorse, was sentenced to life imprisonment. Ming-rai collapsed in shock upon hearing the verdict. At that moment, Euro finally spoke up to defend herself, explaining that she had not committed those crimes, that it was all Yan-woo's scheme, and even threatening that she would make Yan-woo suffer in hell just like her. In the end, she was ruthlessly taken to prison. After Euro was punished, everyone's life returned to normal. Yan-woo, through her own efforts, founded a cosmetics company. Meanwhile, Tae and Sue, who had spent several years together, developed feelings for each other. The two happily walked down the aisle. At the wedding, Yoon-chae once again confessed her feelings to Yan-woo, hoping she would give him a chance to make amends. If she hadn't made up her mind, he would wait forever. Euro was serving her sentence in prison and was bullied every day. From then on, she refused to eat and began to give up on herself. Yan-woo volunteered in the prison, counseling the inmates. When she was leaving, she saw Euro crouched in the corner being bullied. At that moment, she couldn't help but recall her own miserable days in prison. Out of compassion, she wanted to help. The next day, Yan-woo sent a drawing of her son to Euro in prison, conveying Taeyong's longing for her. Yan-woo also brought a letter to comfort Euro, urging her to live on. After reading Yan-woo's letter, Euro shed tears of regret. From that day onward, the two sisters no longer clashed with each other. Instead, they began exchanging letters. Yan-woo knew that this was the greatest comfort she could give Euro. Now, she too would live a happy life with her son. To film ends here. If you're interested, please like and follow us. See you next time.